Welcome, Ultras and Switchy sisters alike, to episode 12 of the weekly episodic gaming adjacent, sometimes cartoon livestream podcast show. This is Switch to Ultra on your regularly scheduled Monday. And all I can say before we get into everything is welcome to the Switch to Ultra family. I'm your co-parent, BH Ultra.
Yeah, I'm your co-parent, Switchy.
And at the behest of making this about me, or just like swaying it in one direction, in one particular direction, today that we're recording this, and of course the date of the pod, is June 16th, 2025. And those that have been following me for a long enough time, or have at least just watched the most recent Smash video I released this year, know that the first ever video I created or uploaded on the BH Ultra YouTube channel was a podcast episode that was uploaded June 15th, 2019, which was 6 years ago plus 1 day. And I think it's interesting that we have very different timelines, at least on YouTube. It did take me a while to begin actually hitting my stride and doing stuff by myself, but you've been on YouTube a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
You had it in
effectively since 2008.
Wow. Were you posting back then or just had the account?
Yeah.
Damn, what were you posting in 2008?
So what I first made were Mario plushie videos, because when I was a kid,
That's magical.
and the first video I ever watched on YouTube was Cute Mario Bros. I think Summer Fun. I think it's a video where some kid, I forget how old they were at the time. They were probably 10 to 15, which actually is a pretty big gap. I'm not really narrowing it down. But, they just kind of have the Mario. The Mario is like a figurine and Luigi's a plushie.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching that, just looking for Mario games on the internet. And I wanted to make my own videos. So over the next few years, I kind of got a bunch of stuffed animals together. And I kind of did, Super Mario Logan style stuff.
That's the popular one. I remember watching plushie videos as a kid, but I wasn't registering channels yet as a kid, so I just, whatever showed up. I was like how people treat the algorithm today, where they just let stuff show up on their lap.
Yeah. So what I did back then was, for the most part, it's actually funny. I think I made videos for a while before I ever watched Super Mario Logan. But once I kind of got into Super Mario Logan, I became a pretty big fan, at least back then. I know somehow it's still going on. I don't think I really got into their stuff or Logan's stuff until maybe like a year or two after I was into Cute Mario Bros. I think it's like you can't be 6 for Super Mario Logan. You have to be 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's 8-year-old jokes that really go over your head if you're 6.
Yeah. So I remember I forget what it's called, Mario and Luigi's Stupid and Dumb Adventures. I remember watching through all of that.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think that's Super Mario Logan. If not, there's some sort of narrative episodic series they did starting in probably 2007 or 2008. I might be wrong with the dates there.
Were your Mario plushie videos, were they doing numbers? Did they have numbers?
A couple of them had over 10,000 views.
Okay, because
it's funny because
definitely watched a lot of them in 2008, but didn't know who I was watching. So there is a very slim chance that on our individual timelines that we were brought together by fate, that I, as a child, was in my computer room watching Mario plush videos, and it's entirely possible I watched yours.
To be fair, I was about to say that probably didn't happen, but that's a good 10,000. It's funny when you have a video that big that's only watched by little children, because it has 10,000 views but zero views. I mean, 10,000 views but 0 comments.
Right.
Because kids aren't a lot. I mean, I think there's a good chance that a lot of those videos that people watching them couldn't even read. Not even joking. And I mean, it's not like the videos really had that much of a narrative structure to them. I didn't write stuff down. I was a child.
You were playing, and you were filming yourself playing.
I was kind of playing. My dad or my mom would usually follow me around. I remember one time I had the idea of pretending that Mario and Luigi were playing on my DS together. So I just played a whole ass level of New Super Mario Bros. In the middle of the video. And I think it was probably my dad. My dad tried to follow along by just kind of keeping his kind of aiming the camera at the DS screen, but of course it looked like shit. And that video had 12,000 views. So 12,000 people. Yeah, right.
I was given one hand cam or something for Christmas one year. It must have been 2009 or 2010, because I started watching YouTube in 2008. And it's interesting to still have those kind of not like YouTuber brained, but just in a way that like you understand that these are things that people want to watch, but you don't quite understand how they're made. But you are like
Mhm.
these are I don't want to call these videos like adult concepts, but it's interesting how that conforms to what you're currently doing. Because I remember back in the day, I would like listen to a podcast
Mhm.
as a very young kid, like a legit podcast, but I would have these SpongeBob plushies and I would like play with them and like basically bounce the plushies up and down to make them be the people on the podcast talking.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
and I think those are, like, 2 different worlds kinda clashing together there. I think we I don't know if the chip on my shoulder is the correct term per se, but I think growing up, like, very tied to YouTube, very latched onto it, I at least had to, like, go into the computer room, into the office, and understand how the computer worked to do that. But now you just put an
Uh-huh.
iPad in front of a kid, and they're gonna keep scrolling and show them whatever.
I forgot what I was planning to say this to. I think I decided not to say it because I didn't know how to word it without sounding kind of pretentious. But
Yeah.
I genuinely wonder what the internet would be like if mobile phones weren't a thing. Like
Yeah.
if for the past, like, because I do think the audience, the kind of people that use computers or access the internet changed a lot after, I think the internet became accessible through apps in phones. And I remember as a kid, I kind of had this like little thing against phones where I'm like, oh, you're using your phone to go on YouTube. I use my computer for some reason. I
Yeah.
guess because there's a certain, especially on iOS, there's a lot of things you just can't do on it because it's very proprietary. It's very on some levels anti-consumer, but I'd say the Apple model does have some ease of use benefits, which is why so many people pick it up.
Mhm.
But it occurred to me that like it changed the way a lot of people see the internet and how what people think of the internet. Because the idea when I used to always think of the internet as the computer,
Yes.
and like those two things were inseparable. But let's say go to the internet on your phone. It's for me that was like going into the domain of the internet with your phone. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny because the phone, like the phone system existed a lot longer than the internet did, but it's kind of a silly point of view anyway.
There are
But
certain social media that were always just like, oh, this is a browser thing, and if you want to access it on your phone, your iPod, or whatever, you would just go to like Safari on your phone or whatever. But YouTube,
yeah,
for me, and just like in general, was always the that I think was it the iPod Touch? I think maybe the first generation, or the one that was just all screen. That may have just been the Touch that launched with the YouTube app, because now the YouTube app is an entirely different thing. But clearly, a lot of people have
the YouTube
nostalgia.
app had like some ugly ass TV as
Yeah,
its
it looked like a
icon.
TV. It served an entirely different purpose. It worked differently. And I remember like as soon as I got an iPod Touch, I was already on YouTube all the time, but that only like made it worse. I think it's more like with phones, it's more of a data issue where on my iPod Touch, and I think I've said this to you before, I only had internet connection where I was connected to the Wi-Fi. So when I was like on the bus or at school or like at aftercare programs or whatever, I couldn't watch videos, whether it be like real shows or YouTube videos. But like iTunes kind of felt like it wasn't like the Wild West, like it wasn't like a piracy website per se, like LimeWire or something. But there were definitely like less qualifications of what was allowed on iTunes and what wasn't. So I remember like downloading a
I
bunch
mean,
of Film Cow videos and a bunch of Clay World videos on my iPod Touch. And also, the reason I got into Friendship is Magic the first time is because the first 2 episodes of that, for whatever reason, were just free on iTunes, and I just wanted to watch anything that was free on iTunes. Like, I need something to watch while I'm on the
fine.
school bus. So I just watched the first 2 episodes of Friendship is Magic over and over. And then I eventually like started watching it, but then I kind of fell out of it during the first season, I think. And that was as it was
Yeah.
airing.
Oh, wow, you're a day one brony then.
Yeah. Even oh dude, it goes even farther than that, all right? Because back in the day before was it Gen 4? Before Gen 4 even existed, we had like a rotation of 5 or 6 DVDs that we would just watch in my household regardless of what the season was. And one of those DVDs was like a Gen 3 movie. It was like Minty's Fabulous Christmas or whatever, Christmas
Yeah.
Adventure.
I remember Mr. Renner called that an animated atrocity.
Why? He just doesn't get
I
it.
don't
I mean,
know.
it is bad.
Uh-huh.
He's right. It is bad, but I do think
To be
there is
honest,
a
like I feel like those kinds of kids shows where the characters are always saying really obvious things,
Mhm.
like though that I kind of that kind of giddy kind of style of writing for children. Like I was sick of that when I was 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's
so
really
like
easy for adults also to watch like child characters being like obnoxious or selfish or annoying and be like, God, I hate this character. It's like, all right, well, this is still a child. Like the kids are just kind
Yeah.
of like this. I had two different occurrences actually yesterday while we were watching stuff in the BH Ultra server. One, my longtime friend was telling me about how she just started watching Steven Universe, and she's in like season one right now. She's like, yeah, like Lars is like really like selfish and annoying and like transparently insecure. And it's like, yeah, that is true. He's also like 15 or 16. So I kind of like give it some like, yeah, that's how someone would act. And then also last night,
Lars again? Is that
yeah,
the one with the earrings or?
yeah, the one that looks like dog
Oh wow.
ears. We'll talk more about
Yeah,
Lars in the
I
coming
just guessed
occurrence of
that.
this pod. I mean, you got it. Well, that's not the one that people say is the most annoying. There's one character who's kind of like the average person you'd see at a convention, and it's really interesting that most of the fandom really hates this character's name is Ronaldo. Really hates this character when I feel like more often than not, like a lot of people online act like that character. And maybe that's why they hate him. Because it's a reflection. But also, we were watching we started Kid Cosmic, which is a cartoon that I feel like only I've seen. I'm sure other people have, but nobody really talks about it. And I remember I was watching it with my roommate in California back in 21, and that's Kid Cosmic as an example of a child character who, you know, acts like a kid. And I remember sitting with him, and he liked the show. This is not a testament against him. I still love him, but he was kind of having trouble watching the show because like, oh man, this kid is like so annoying about his adventure and like obnoxious, and I hate his voice, and he's so selfish. And then later, and I would be like, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And then like in later days, he was way more into anime. I would walk into his room and he would be watching like Naruto. He's like, oh, this is my favorite anime. I'm like, do you not see that this child character is equally, if not more annoying than the one you're referring to? That's Naruto's whole thing. I don't think it necessarily begets like you can write a child character however you want just because they are a kid. You know, they could be unreasonable because they're a kid. But I definitely give them some slack on being annoying because kids just kind of are annoying.
Yeah, I genuinely wonder. I mean, it's funny whenever people talk about writing kids and how to like write a kid character. I think of myself how I would go about it, and I'm like, shit, I don't know. It's kind of tough. It's kind of tough.
I haven't had an excuse to like be around kids for a while. I don't know. Also, there's like this happens a lot as well with some people who are out of touch when you believe that what's happening on the internet is sort of what life is. So it happens with other shows where like, oh, the show is about teenagers and it's like, oh, we're going to set it during high school and everyone is like overwhelmingly woke. And it's like, this is what kids are like how progressive they are and how open they are about trans people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I am saying, however, that the idea that because this is more open on the internet, that like actual high schools are more accepting is kind of a misnomer because I don't believe that's true. I think the average high school is still probably miserable to be in.
Yeah, no, especially I've never liked the environment of high school. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think at least from my experience, in some ways, I think that I lived through a point in kind of contemporary American history where the existence of like gay people kind of stopped being a thing that everyone was kind of hush hush about when it came to children.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like if it seemed that like bringing up the existence of that. It's really dirty saying existence, but I think I know what you mean. It always seemed like a thing that adults wouldn't want to bring up or kind of mention in my
You
vicinity.
could do it, just not around my kids.
Nowadays, it's I think it's a little bit different. Like the idea of, for example, a kid being openly gay at school. I was like, how does that even happen?
Yeah.
How do you just like? It's like it was hard for me to picture. This is more when I was like 11 or 12.
Granted, I sometimes forget that I went to a very strict like conservative Catholic school, so maybe that's also part of it. But the example I'm going for is that like it's the equivalent of like if we were like, oh, let's write a kid character and we're like, oh, what are kids like? They play Fortnite and like say Riz and watch Skibbity Toilet. Like that's a very internet centric idea of a kid. Like how are we to tell if actual children are all like that? It's possible that that's only a type of kid that exists on the internet because they're terminally online.
Have you heard the no Skibbity Toilet drama?
No.
was that meme where it's this video?
Oh, that kid with the spiked hair. What do you mean you ever watched Skibbity Toilets?
You imbecile. He was like,
and I'm sure there was stuff like that when we were kids, of like the older generation. They're like, yeah, they're always playing like Call of Duty or something, and they want to kill
like
people.
Literally, That's like literally one of my least favorite tropes in TV shows, to be honest with you, is I guess like shows that came out when we were kids. You know, I always complain about this. The way they would talk about video games and represent video games just miffed me. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's like whenever, well, here's one thing. The first thing that annoys the hell out of me is that, you know, TV shows for their sound design, they usually use sound effects from sound libraries.
Right.
So what you'll always fucking have is you'd have a character playing like an Xbox or a Wii or something like that, and the sound effects they use is from like some stupid ass arcade sound effects library.
Yeah.
So they're playing like a shooter and there's fucking Atari sound effects. It drives me nuts. And I like the character. There's good things about him, but that's one of my least favorite things about Sam in Total Drama. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's just
It's
very
just like
strange.
it's like the way they write him. It's like you guys have no idea what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and it's okay. I just find I guess it just made me roll my eyes so much as a kid.
Mm-hmm. He exclusively plays Donkey Kong and Duck Hunt.
So yeah.
Granted, as a fan of like retro games, I was like, I was stoked to see that. Like, I pointed at the screen, I'm like, oh man, those are things. Because at that point in my life, it was sort of novel to see that because, you know, most people were playing modern games. Like, there was sort of a fringe enjoyment or audience for retro games. I think the thing that impacted me the most, or the thing that upset me, or that still does, is modern internet culture when they try and put like memes in shows.
It's hard to do that right.
Yeah, because they're moving so fast. Unless they're like, my thing has always been, it's either it has to be timeless, it has to be something about internet culture, or it has to be specifically tied to that thing. So like whenever, this isn't a good example, but if we're using My Little Pony again, whenever they would reference specific memes in the fandom, it's like, okay, that is tied to that thing. And I know there was one bit I remember in watching, I think it was season 1 of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, where they did the redraw of that one Candace storyboard where she's going, Mom, holy fuck, and kicking down the door. Like, that is a Disney TVA, like, animation adjacent joke, so I think you can use it. But then there's equivalents of, like, how many, the No Me Gusta in Powerpuff Girls 2016.
Like Powerpuff Girls.
The one that got me the most is in the Total Drama reboot when they do like a This Is Sparta reference. And I said it in my video that in the original season of Total Drama from 2007, they do
like dramatic.
Yeah, they do a dramatic
like
chipmunk, and those memes are from around the same time. And it took them 20 or so, like a little under 20 years to reference something from that same era. It's like, you can't, I know that it's nearly impossible to do something modern, but I don't know if you remember this, if you were like, because 2015 onward is sort of when I really got back into Cartoon Network because of stuff like Steven Universe. And then a show like We Bare Bears would come out, and I wouldn't really like love it, but it's like, oh, I want to watch the new show. It's got Estelle singing the theme song. I should check it out. And I remember,
I didn't know Estelle was in the theme song of We Bare Bears.
Yeah, well, that was the carryover. It's like, oh, it's the Garnet chick. But the main complaint I remember hearing, like when that show was first starting out, is that the Bears would use smartphones in the show. And people kept saying like, oh, this is going to make the show so dated in like a decade's time.
Like,
as if we would like stop using smartphone.
Incredible, are like world-changing technology.
Yeah.
But actually, that reminds me of like a bit someone said about the new King of the Hill reboot a few days ago I saw. Where it's like, perhaps they should do an episode about drones or maybe iPads or some shit like that.
Yeah, what about DoorDash?
And it's like, well, wow, Hank Hill gets a DoorDash.
Well, because every animated reboot has an episode like that.
Yeah, and I wonder. It's funny. I know Phineas and Ferb. Now they all have like smartphones, which is interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I guess it takes place like a year after the first Phineas and Ferb. It
definitely changes the context a little bit.
How so?
I don't know. I feel like, I guess for Candace it does. Like if you wanted to take a picture of something, you got. Like, previously in the previous season, she's like, oh, I have to prove that this thing exists, this machine exists, this invention. She takes a shitty picture on her flip phone, and that's really hard to, like, make out. But when you have you got an iPhone in your pocket, you could just film it, you know?
Yeah, I guess I want, okay, I was about to say, because she has taken pictures on her flip phone before.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, to be fair, I feel like that's like fuel for, like, a really good joke. Where just like she's like, oh, I can use like this, I can take a video of it, and it just like somehow just doesn't work.
She makes an AI generated video of Phineas and Ferb.
It's like Linda is like, oh, you know, those AI videos are so
that's not real. That's AI.
Actually, that reminds me. This is an aside, but I remember I saw a picture. I don't know if you know the musician Fiona Apple, just a singer songwriter. There's like a picture of her in in like a suit of armor on like a subway. And when I first saw it, I thought it was AI, but no, she just did that shit back in the 90s. And it's so interesting that like those kinds of situations, we now just see it and think, okay, that's just some like AI shit.
There's
Like imagine a
one.
celebrity nowadays like trying to like take a picture of themselves eating spaghetti or something like that.
Yeah, there's one trailer. It's for the new. I forget what the movie's called. Let me find it. Actually, is this it? That it isn't. I don't think it is AI, but I'll show this right now. All right, I don't think it is AI. Like it looks real, but the way it's framed and shot, like this shot of like zooming in on all of these shots, like this with them talking like that. This shot specifically of Aziz just driving here. This all looks like how those fake AI trailers have looked in the past. And I don't know if this is a stylistic choice. I don't know if they're like preparing people for the future of like AI movie trailers to make them look like this, or if this is just a strange coincidence, but it really makes me not want to see the movie. It's really like uncharacteristic framing, and like the timing of the dialogue is really off in the trailer. It's just a bad trailer. All of these
Yeah.
shots look like I can't even put my finger on why, but you see what I mean, right? That it sort of replicates the way that the camera moves in AI generated videos.
Yeah, do it. Play a couple seconds of it again. Let me just see.
Let me get the Aziz bit. Like look at this specifically. Like that bit when he's driving.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
a
there's
lot of
something
that.
about it that I feel like I know what you're talking about, though I
Mhm.
don't know if this is a confirmation bias thing. It could go either way, but what's interesting is, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you know, I guess trailer developers are now using AI storyboarding for trailers and stuff
Oh,
like that. I don't know what the term is, trailer maker, whatever it is. And like that, like
CapCut.
picks and chooses, you know, like scenes that, you know, seem like relevant or valuable or
Mhm.
diverse to kind of show for a movie. Because I mean, I don't know, you have a lot of stuff like that now, where automatic like thumbnail picking and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Though I'm just kind of guessing.
Have you ever gotten, and I don't want to be mean because I think their hearts are in the right place, although they're trying to sell something. Have you ever had one of those, like either verified account or you get an email from one of those companies or brands or just one person that's like, hey, I'm a professional thumbnail maker. I can make your thumbnail like stand out more. This is what your thumbnail looked like before. This is what it looks like now. And the one that they edited to make different, it looks like every other thumbnail of every other video.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's more
I've never, I've
important to
never,
make your thumbnail
I've never
stand
had
out.
people, I've never had people offer it to me.
Maybe my
That I
thumbnails
know
just
of.
suck.
I've had people offer to edit for me, but I've never had like anyone send me, you know, a promo reel or anything
Hmm.
like that.
I think I'm just
Um,
looking for something different because sometimes I see people who are doing their editing demo reels and they're all edited like Mr. Beast YouTube shorts. Like all the text
the
as a
thing,
sound
yeah,
effect when they like bounce onto screen and there's like explosions and stuff. It's like this really isn't what I'm looking for at all. Looking for
yeah,
something a little bit more subtle.
yeah. I mean, even I like struggle with it. Just editing in general, like, what I want from it. You know,
Hmm.
it's very easy to kind of worry about whether you're doing enough or not, or doing too much, stuff like
Sometimes
that.
there's things I want to do differently, like have a physical set to be like other YouTubers. Because like not because I want to be like other YouTubers, but more like I really like the idea of like having a physical set. I always loved that YouTube shelf of like all the cool nerd shit that you own in the background. But
Yeah,
I for better or for worse, have made this green screen sort of my. I mean, it doesn't belong to me. Everyone uses a green screen, but that's sort of my style, and I don't think I could change it up
yeah,
too much, at least not drastically over a short period of time, because you do develop your own
yeah,
style, and that's where a lot of people starting out, they're like, oh, I don't want to rip off this person or like do this bit that this other person did. But honestly, like you just take from what you watch, and as long as it's a combination of multiple things, it's no longer stealing, then it's just influence.
yeah. I would. Well, actually, I don't know. Would I love it? I don't know if I'd love it that much, but you know, I don't have, you know, a dedicated space for recording in the sense of like I can kind of just set it up and have it always be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I've always been pretty light on face cam footage,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of annoying setting everything up.
Right.
Especially because I have like lights now, which is sometimes, you know, takes a little bit of time, and also takes up a lot of space. So, you know, if I have, you know, to edit a several hour long video, you know, I kind of have to have that stuff up for you know, days, and it takes up a lot of floor space. It's hard to walk
Mm-hmm.
around, stuff like that. So
That's why it's hard to. I mean, you've seen my setup now that I do my best to try and separate it into like a work side and like a living side. But
Yeah.
sometimes if I need to move the couch, it's just kind of sitting in the middle of the hallway. But I also like, oh, I'm gonna film in like 3 days time, so I don't need to move it back because then I'll just have to move it again. So I'll just leave it there for elongated periods of time. I try and do all my filming in bulk. Like at the end of the month, I film everything and then I have the rest of the month to edit it. Last time I did that, or recently, my lights stopped working like right in the middle of that. So now I've got to re-record the rest of it. And I don't mind doing it in different week increments, but I like having it all set. So that way, if I need to fix something, it's a lot easier to go back to. It's really just a matter
I know
of
how
which one you
you.
want to be
Uh-huh.
harder. Because, like, it's harder to film yourself reading lines, obviously, because you can't be looking at the script, but it makes it easier down the line for editing because then you have to have, or you can have less on screen. So it's really just a matter of pick which one that you think is the most annoying and then try and circumvent that.
Yeah. Yeah, there have been times I've had like a long block of just script without voiceover. I mean, with
Hmm.
that voiceover, and I thought like I do not want to fucking edit this shit, so I'll
Yeah,
just like record it in face cam.
because then people just want to look at something moving, and they do. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, we might as well. I'm gonna jump into this, my regular weekly tier list update, and I am going to. I've been considering this a while as of late because we didn't talk a lot about it last week. We obviously had to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2. I have since added all the games that I played on the Nintendo Switch 2, the day one exclusives, because those technically came out in 2025. But here's the thing when it comes to games, and I saw a tweet earlier that really made me think about this, is it's really hard to draw the fine line and balance out movies, TV, and video games. And I think there are wildly different mediums, maybe hobbies. Like TV and movies are incredibly similar. I don't like to judge something or rank something until I finished it, until I've seen everything there is. And a movie, that's like a 2 to 3 hour commitment, right? You knock that out, you can
Hmm.
do that one day. Even like a show, if you really want to binge it, you could do it all in a day. I like watching them week by week. So something like Abbott and Goosebumps have dropped all at once, but I'm behind on. I'm pretty sure I did the math. Oh, I now have finished Chibiverse season 3, so I'll put that. It's mostly fan service, is the thing. I don't know if that's necessarily bad, but most of the Disney's Chibiverse I've enjoyed is me pointing at the screen and being like, "Oh shit, it's the Gravity Falls character. Oh shit, it's the Buzz on Maggie." But it's fine. I guess I'll put it. I'll put it
What is
above.
PB verse?
It's sort of like, I mean, Jellystone is an apt comparison, but it's also sort of like that that House of Mouse show, where it's chibi versions of all of the Disney TVA characters, which are just the animated TV show characters. And it started out as like shorts between episodes where they wouldn't talk. And then they developed it into its own show where now like characters from Primos and Big City Greens and Owl House and Amphibia and Phineas and Ferb all just hang out in this chibi world and talk with actual dialogue, and they use it as an
Mhm.
excuse to like have other characters like Grunkle Stan and Mabel come back, and even like Bonkers and just old, like, you could tell the people who are making it are fans of all of Disney TVA, even like more obscure shows or rather less popular shows. There's been more references to stuff like Bonkers or the Buzz on Maggie or even like Fish Hooks as of late. And as a fan
Oh
of all
wow.
those shows, I like seeing it, but I don't know if I would necessarily say it has that much substance to it beyond me, doing that Leo gif and pointing at the screen and being like, "Oh, this is a character I know from the thing." So I
This is a
think putting
thing
it,
that I recognize. This is a reference that I'm like in tune
maybe we'll
with.
put it
Mhm.
beneath Daredevil. I forgot I finished that. But after that, I'm pretty sure, aside from something like Phineas, and Wild Pack is coming out weekly on Nickelodeon, but I've run into the hump where I do not have cable television, and everything else is on streaming or like a Disney Now app I can watch. But Wild Pack, I don't think I could watch until it's on streaming. So I watched one episode, but it is in fact here. Everything else, like Stugo, Moon Girl, Jellystone, Andor, I guess the other shows, I think I did the math. In about 5 weeks' time, I will be finished with these seasons. New shows will have started up, like The Bear season 4 and Ironheart, and then eventually Peacemaker, and I guess King of the Hill as well. But before that moment, they'll all be up there. But that's where something like Doom: The Dark Ages comes in. I want to get your thought on this as well. For Doom, I think I streamed it about 4 or 5 times, which is about
Okay.
12 hours. Let's say 12 or 15 hours. And I don't like to put a show up here until I finish the show because I want to see all the episodes. I don't like putting a movie up here until I've seen the movie, obviously. Video games, I've done my best to be like, oh, until I've beaten the game, like at least beaten the base game story mode, I don't like to put it up here. But I want your take because do you think you can get an opinion of a game, a formed opinion of the game, before fully beating it? Or if somebody had an opinion on a game, would you require them to beat the game? Because I know that's been a lot of discourse when it comes to like IGN reviewers or whatever, that they have to get the review out in under 12 hours.
I only played like half of the second game or whatever, shit like that. Well, the first thing I'll say is that no, I don't believe it, but I do think I will also say that there's a lot of times where playing like a third of it is a really good heuristic to how much you actually like it. You know, there's nothing I hate more than people say, oh, the series. When I was a kid, I remember one guy, I had like a heated argument with him. He told me that he hated Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. And he said that he only played like half of the first case. And to be fair, he was like 13, but I was still pretty pissed at him.
I thought you were gonna say he was 13 hours into the game.
Well, I mean, I got into the series when I was 12. But,
there are some games
like 13-year-olds do say like boo-boo shit like that. But
it's got no guns in it or ball.
Yeah, no, literally. I mean, I don't entirely blame myself for finding people saying that to be incredibly frustrating and like facile as a kid, because it actually is incredibly dumb and facile.
Yeah.
But that's not really the debate being had, because frankly, I'll be honest with you, I haven't played Doom: The Dark Ages. But I think what you think of it right now is probably going to be what you think about it when you're done with it.
Yeah.
Maybe unless the ending of the game is super eye-opening or super bad, potentially. Or, for example, if there, yeah, I mean, that's what I like, the ending or the second half or the final levels, like, really does something that kind of kills your enjoyment of it. But games usually aren't paced that way to have, like, a huge change in the way you kind of play it towards the end.
Yeah, and
so,
films
frankly,
and shows are overarching stories, whereas I feel the most important thing to a game is how it controls, you know, the game itself. And that really doesn't drastically change in the later stages of a game. So I still plan on finishing Doom: The Dark Ages because I think I'm a decent ways through it, but I've gotten now 15 or so hours into it, and I feel like I get the gist of at least how it controls.
Yeah.
So I would say for this game in particular, I don't like it as much as I liked the previous Doom Eternal. And I think one of the major... Well, the lack of mini-map has been really annoying for everyone to watch because I like getting everything on a map. So I'll walk 5 feet in a direction and then open the map, make sure I'm going the right way, walk a couple more feet, open the map again. And I looked into it. There really is no mini-map in the game. And that a mini-map is always a saving grace for me. And I try and walk on eggshells with this because I don't want to... nobody remembers this because nobody was watching at the time, but I was streaming Spyro the Reignited trilogy in like 2021, and I spent the whole game being like, dude, I wish this fucking game had a mini-map. It would make it so much better. And apparently it was just hidden in like the settings menu that you had to turn it on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder if I played with a mini-map, because I don't remember like feeling very lost, because I feel like the levels in that game were small enough that I never really got stuck.
Yeah.
But actually, you're reminding me, I'm playing through Mass Effect right now, and it's so fucking annoying when I land on a planet and there is a mini-map, but it's just dog shit. So and frankly, I'll probably get, I might piss people off. I don't find the planetary exploration to be that fun. So it's just a slog to kind of explore, make sure I get all the medals or whatever.
That was a big problem with Starfield, is it just wasn't fun to traverse, nor was combat fun in that game. And that's another one that, like, I only managed to stream 3 times. And grant that's probably like a 100-hour RPG or whatever. So a fan of that could see my 9 hours and be like, well, you didn't really experience the game. But from my standpoint, like, I spent 3 streams in that game and it didn't grab me. I feel like if it can't grab you after a certain amount of, like, there needs to be a threshold, right, for when the game gets good. Because that's what my one friend and former roommate used to always say about like a Persona game or even like Arcane as a show. It's like, oh, but after like episode 3, that's when it gets really good. Or, oh, if you're like 5 hours or 10 hours into the game, that's when it really picks up. And I kind of don't like games like that.
Persona 4, yeah, it kind of asks you. Well, I mean, it's not like I like the beginning of Persona 4, but you don't really get into the normal gameplay loop for 4 or 5 hours, and that's probably even lowballing it a little bit. And I think that's when games take that long to take the training wheels off, it's can be pretty annoying, all things considered. It doesn't bother me so much because I think when I play games like that, like really long RPGs, there's something really rewarding and fun about kind of going through the whole thing, seeing it all. But it can be a pain in the ass, frankly.
At the end of the
Um,
day, if at any, I mean, I'm going to keep coming back to this every week. So if at any point I want to move something, I easily can. So maybe if my opinion
yeah.
changes as I'm playing any of these games, then it will shift. But Doom the Dark Ages, the other thing too that really got to me is I know it's a mechanic of the game, but that doesn't mean I have to necessarily like the mechanic, is there are different melee weapons you can unlock, like a mace or a gauntlet or whatever. And that's all well and good. That's really fun. But because of that, the melee attack, like, you pushing in the stick, like any first person shooter, you push in the stick to do a melee attack. Because of that, the melee attack has an ammo counter. And if you do it too
Mhm.
many times without collecting melee ammo, you can't do a melee attack. Which I feel like kind of defeats the purpose of having a melee attack to begin with. Granted, you could always use your shield as a shield rush, but I don't love how it controls. So I think what I'm actually going to do
Uh-huh.
is, although I had a lot of fun with it, so I'll switch with Monster Hunter Rise and maybe put that there. And then, oh man, I really loved Mario Kart World, and I'm still loving it. Again, like I've played all the tracks, so I feel like that's at least more to say about any of the other games, although I haven't gotten to see everything quite yet. I think I will put it above Mickey 17. And then Welcome Tour. I think it's cool conceptually. I'll put it bottom of C. Just because it is not a pack-in game. I think it's
Have you
more
played it
fun to
all?
like play it at the Walmart and see it on your screen. I think I'll put Fast Fusion like above Spider-Man. Because I had fun with it, but I think once you play it for like 5 hours, it's kind of just over. And then Survival Kids, I guess I'll put uh well, I don't want it to be above Welcome Tour. I guess
The top
uh
of D. I mean, the British guy was funny. I'll give
yeah,
that.
I mean, I wasn't bored, but I wouldn't like recommend it. I'll put it bottom of D. I really did not play enough of Bravely Default, so this is the first one I'm running
Oh yeah,
into that I'm
and
like,
you.
I
I
don't
was thinking you were
know.
about to like. I was like thinking if he rates Bravely Default, I'm gonna get mad at him. Like
Yeah,
I was
but
about
I
to like
could
say
always
some
move these.
shit.
I will put Yakuza top of I'll put it above Chibiverse for right now because I like the game parts of the game, but I don't like how annoying it is to get to the game parts of the game. At some point, I'm going to get rid of these wrestling ones on the left. I just don't know how to, in fact, get rid of them. And then the rest of the stuff I got to get caught up on, clean slate. However, before we get into actual news information, this weekend on Friday, I managed to catch Ballerina, the John Wick saga, and Materialists. Now, do you know anything about either of these films?
No,
Have you seen any John Wick movie?
actually, I've not.
Okay. They're not really my thing, but I get what they're going for. Like, I understand that it's sort of a modern contextualization of an action movie, but using ideas and imagery from, like, classic silent film, like slapstick, your Charlie Chaplin, your Buster Keaton or whatever. I think that's
Interesting. That's
fun.
not what I imagined it as.
Yeah, the series is very goofy films. Granted, I don't love it as much as other people do, like the John Wick series at large, but I think that makes this stand out more. Like, literally in Ballerina, there's a scene where she's hitting someone with a remote, and it's like, it flashes the Charlie Chaplin house bit on the TV in the background for a second. And I think that's fun. I think a comedy of errors, a Mr. Magoo action movie is a really fun idea. But I think this kind of has an issue that the other John Wick movies don't really have. And I don't know if I talked about this previously, but I sort of have a vendetta against the John Wick movies because I always heard it. And this was when I was deep in my Ace era. Like, I really just wanted, quote unquote makers putting unnecessary sex scenes, so on and so forth. I just hated the very generic, like, Hollywood love story. And
Uh-huh.
what I always heard about John Wick is like, oh, it's not like those other like dead wife movies. It's not that he's avenging his dead wife or going to rescue his wife. He's actually going to rescue his dog. And I'm like, oh, that's actually really cool. Like, it's nice to see basically a
Millennial
single.
shit. What the fuck?
Yeah, Reddit. That's why Reddit loves the movie. It's nice to see like an action movie where he's not rescuing his daughter or his wife or his dead wife or a vengeance or whatever. It's just for his dog. And I heard that and then I got excited for it. And then I turn on the movie and it has fucking flashbacks of his dead wife. And the only reason he cares about the dog is because it belonged to his dead wife. I was duped. And I've hated John Wick ever since. Anyway, Ballerina has really awful dialogue, which makes the slapstick and like the allusions to silent film stand out more. But I think this movie would be better as a silent film. There's dialogue in this movie that made me roll my eyes, and I don't think you should ever have that in your movie. But it looked better than all these. I guess below Final Destination, because although this film looks a lot better than Final Destination, and at least Final Destination at least had characters that didn't want to make me rip my ears out. Materialists is a little different. I liked it more. I didn't love it. I liked it as Pedro Pascal, Chris Evans, and Dakota Johnson. And I like to give actors the benefit of the doubt. I used to always say there are no bad actors, just bad directors, right? And I would say that about like the likes of Hayden Christensen when it came to the Star Wars prequels. He got way too much shit for the Star Wars prequels. He was just doing what George told him to do. You know, he was just following orders like you are supposed to when a director is speaking to you. However, I've since seen other Hayden Christensen movies, and while I agree that I don't think he should have gotten all the hate from the prequels because the prequels were just bad, I do think there are such things as bad actors. I wanted to give Dakota Johnson the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Madam Web was a fluke. Maybe 50 Shades was a fluke. All four of them. But after seeing this, after seeing Dakota Johnson in a third movie, I think the common denominator might be her. I think she might just be bad at her job.
The one who played Madam Web, or was that someone else? Okay,
yes, she is in fact. Her web connects them all. Yes, I think because it was like it's a fine rom-com. It's sort of reductive. There's one bit. Does anyone? I don't think anyone cares. Nobody's good. Do you care about spoilers for Materialists? Because this made me. I had to stifle my laughter in the theater because the major third act twist, the thing that changes the entire plot and makes Dakota Johnson's character realize that she's been vain this entire time, that people aren't math. The big twist is she finds scars on Pedro Pascal's shins and calves and learns that he used to be 5'6" and he got the experimental shin lengthening surgery where they break your legs to make him taller. And
Really?
That has been a bit amongst me and my roommates for ages now. So I rushed home and I ran upstairs and immediately told them, I'm like, you need to know that Pedro Pascal's character got the experimental shin lengthening surgery in this film. Bottom of B. Have you heard of that? The shin lengthening surgery?
I've heard of it. I didn't know people actually did it yet. You know what I mean? Like well,
that's what I keep seeing is people on Instagram who are like on crutches for like a year and they're like, yeah, it hurts, it's awful, but hey, it's worth it. I gotta train my legs back. I am a very short man. I will attest to this. I am 5'6". I'm saying this live on the air. I'm very small. But I think that being short is not embarrassing. What is embarrassing is being short and being embarrassed about it. Does that make sense?
Oh, of course. I definitely think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm actually pretty I'm sympathetic to short people. And that sounds like so. Like it's not like you get. It's not like you have like fucking like a disease or whatever. But this is kind of an incel talking point, so I might get in trouble for this. But I've heard people say that under 6 foot, she's not gonna want you, and I think that's a little extreme. Like I don't think it's that extreme. Yeah. But I've seen, like, I've talked to girls. And
that's
like
crazy.
The immediacy of like, oh, I would never date someone under 6 feet. Kind of concerns me a little bit.
Sure, but also
at least in the sense of like,
if you were short, you wouldn't want to date that person anyway. It's sort of like when somebody cheats on their partner, is like you're not glad that they cheated, but like, well, if they're the kind of person that would cheat, you would rather know now than find out later.
Good point.
Like, it's good to not be with that person.
Yeah, I guess there's something to be said. I feel like there are certain kind of elements to which, whether it's like overt, I think there are some times where short men can be a little belittled.
Yeah, I guess it's a matter of how much you think that's important to people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think like I haven't seen extreme examples. But I guess for what it's worth, I will say I'm very grateful to be the height I am, just because it seems
you
that
can pick apples
being
from trees.
Tall, I can pick apples from trees, and for whatever reason, people kind of revere you when you're tall a little bit. Or at the very least, they kind of will often compliment you for it, like it's a thing you have control of.
Nice job on being tall, bro.
It's like, yeah, even I've felt it. So occasionally I'll see someone who's like 6'7", and I kind of want to tell them they did a good job, even though they literally did it. Like maybe they drank milk. I don't know. Like, and then I realized, oh wait, never mind.
They probably got that experimental shin lengthening surgery.
Yeah, potentially. They kind of locked in for a year and just couldn't walk.
But
that's the whole thing. It's like,
that is funny to me. I think that's
without that.
Objectively
Like, that's
funny
extreme.
because if you are insecure enough to get, one, an experimental surgery, and two, one that breaks your legs on purpose to get like 5 or 6 inches taller, I think that's funny. And I think I should be allowed to laugh at that because that is very silly. I will also say, this is for all my short kings out there. Here's a little piece of advice. Being short is funny. So just lean into it, It automatically makes you a little bit funnier. So I think there's a lot that can be had.
You can have like that Kevin Hart, Danny DeVito thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you really want to. You can make it an endearing thing if you with the right attitude.
People pity you. Yeah. They put coins in your pocket. You do a jolly little dance.
You can sneak under things.
I guess my thing, I don't want to say like my appeal because I never really cared much about that. And I guess maybe that's why I have a differing opinion is because I was never like, I don't know how to describe it, like in the dating scene, quote unquote. Like this is what I see a lot on my TikTok feed. And I think I just lucked out. I'd found the perfect person. And I imagine you did too.
How old is your girlfriend, by the way?
Just a little bit taller than me. I think like an inch taller.
Okay.
Although, I mean, I love her dearly and think she's perfect in every way. But when she wears heels, that goes a little crazy. I think my thing is, too, I just prefer when they are taller than me. Like, I have kind of a complex for it. So I think being short doesn't really bother me either way.
Yeah.
I think it helps with the kind of women I'm interested in, which are just more like domineering women. And I think if you're like a 5'6" dude, bro, who you're trying to find, like, I don't like to call everyone vain because I don't think there's anything wrong with having like individual preferences, I suppose. But I can understand why that might be difficult if you're like, 5'6" and you're hitting up the gym all the time and you're eating like your protein powder and you want to be like the dominant man or whatever, that you probably can't really find someone to match that unless you just find a girl who's shorter, like 4 foot or something. And they do in fact exist. Yeah. But I think just because that's the interest I have and that my appeal has always been that I'm like funny, like I'm not an attractive person, but I will say, you could call me anything in the book. You can call me stupid or ugly or fat or short or whatever. That just flies right off me. But the second somebody says they're like, this guy's not funny, that one does genuinely hurt my feelings.
Really?
Yeah. It's the same thing where, I always had friends and we would play like Smash Bros or any other like fighting game or competitive game, and they would always get so mad and tilted and like frustrated at themselves and at the game. And I never understood that. Like I was never the type to rage at a video game or get tilted about a video game. And I was like, I don't get it. Like how, because I've never been a competitive person. I'm just happy to be involved in like playing with people. So even if I lose, like I don't really care that much. But I can't play Jackbox games with my friends anymore because I care way too much about winning.
No, I feel that.
Those are games I want to win because that is like a provable way to say that like you're the funniest person in the room. And if you put something on the screen and there's no laugh, it's like, oh, I have to retire. Like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing that gets to me. Or I wouldn't say gets to me because it's different for each person. My thing ultimately, what I was getting at is I don't think being short is not embarrassing, nor should you be like insecure about it. But I do think it is funny and embarrassing when there are dudes who are embarrassed about it. Like that one dude who went into the bagel store and was like, I just said bagel, didn't I? The bagel store, and was ranting about how like women won't swipe on him on dating apps because he's short or whatever, and that he's like owed something. I think there's nothing funnier than an angry short man. And I say this again, I am 5'6" and I slouch, so I'm probably closer to 5'5", legally speaking. And if you're short, you gotta own it. You can't let it define you. If it does, then like if you're blaming the world outside of you, then you've already lost. But I do think that is part of the culture of dating apps. I never wanted to be one of those people that's like, oh man, the apps are really ruining everything. But I think legitimately, the more and more I get away from it, I do think, because there is a lot of stigma about, well, there's legal stigma about dating in the workplace, obviously. But then there's like stigma about ruining a friendship, quote unquote, like, oh, you can't date your friends, it'll ruin the friend group. But honestly, that's probably the best way to start dating someone, because then you already like them as a person. Like, I don't think dating apps are necessarily the way to foster a relationship. I'm not an expert on this, but that's how I feel a
Yeah,
little bit on
I
it.
mean, like, the idea. I mean, first of all, I mean, I've never asked someone out in the sense of like,
Oh,
oh,
me neither.
you seem like a nice person. Let's go have dinner sometime
Mm-hmm.
with like some sort of with like pretty overt. This might turn into like making out or sex or whatever. Like that's never been a thing
Or
I've done.
both.
And frankly, what about like just sex but not making out?
What if we
Like sex
don't
but you
touch
have
each
bad
other
breath?
except for the sex?
Yeah.
Movies and holding hands. Something to think
Movies
about.
and holding hands.
I can offer all
But
this. I could take you away from this.
but it's like that's never been a thing I've done, and I can't even really imagine doing it. I guess I actually did go on like one Tinder date ever,
Mm-hmm.
and I think well, actually maybe two, I forget. But like immediately after doing that, I kind of thought, yeah, like it's hard to talk to people, at least for me, when there's stuff like that on the table, but you're still not sure about it. And to be fair, I think that's why a lot of people eventually, a relationship not going well kind of ruins even a potential friendship. Because I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of emotions tied up with love and relationships, or sexuality, all these things, that feeling like you're not getting what you're worth, or you've kind of confided in someone things that are like important to you, like all these things, they're very revealing, and you're being very vulnerable about it, that I think it not going well can kind of ruin a friendship. You know what I mean? If it doesn't, that's great. Definitely. I mean, I definitely prefer, I think it's better if it doesn't ruin a friendship, but I think it's definitely okay to not want to be around someone you used to date anymore. But I think it's worth a shot most of the
Yeah,
time.
the whole thing
You know what I
just feels
mean?
very high school to me, I guess, is the idea of like,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna ruin the friend group by dating. Like, you can be, unless it like ended, I guess my thing is that like, unless it ended in awful disarray. Like, I guess I'm more
Yeah.
accustomed to the amicable split where it's like, ah, this isn't working. Well, we're still cool. As opposed to like the huge blowout fight. Because, whenever there's a huge breakup, whoever you ask about the breakup, nobody's ever gonna say like, "Yeah, it was my fault." It's always gonna be like, "No, it was the other person's
Yeah.
fault." I just think,
Whenever I kind of see that happen, I like want to. I wish I was there for every single fight, just so I could like see it firsthand, as
hmm
opposed to everyone's like. It's so nosy to say that, but it's kind of true. Like I kind of hate when I really don't know what actually happened, and it's frankly no one's gonna be able to tell me in a fair way what
yeah,
actually
you just need to
happened.
use your best dissertation and just by listening to
Yeah.
both. I always there was this one friend that we're not super close anymore, but whenever she would bring up like these situations, I would try and like just by asking questions and making assumptions, sort of like try and understand where the other person was coming from.
Hmm.
And I would kind of get pushback, or she would get angry. It was like, well, why are you siding with them? It's like, well, I'm not trying to side with them. I just want to understand like why a person would do this.
Yeah.
But
That's definitely
I
a behavior
never.
that some people take offense to.
Oh, dude. Oh, it took me a while to like learn how to be a good vent partner, because like it's something I never really learned. That when somebody would bring a problem to me, I'd be like, okay, well, here's how we fix it. Like, this is what we do. And I would be reprimanded. He was like, no, like, I'm venting to you. I don't want to solve the issue. I just want to like tell you about it. And then you could just be like, oh, that thing sucks. But I always feel like I'm not helping when I say like, oh, that thing sucks. But
It's hard to
that's
say.
what venting
That's a
is.
shame.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it can be really hard to say something valuable when someone's venting to you.
Yeah. Just go with the classic, like, oh, that person sounds like a psycho. What's wrong with them? How dare they? But I
Yeah, but
think,
even I try not to say stuff like that, because I don't when someone's venting to me, frankly, sometimes I'll have my opinions, and I don't really want to say anything that kind of works them up more than I should, if that makes
mm-hmm,
sense. Because like, oh yeah, they sound like a dick. It's like, they might
you
not
should
be a
kill
dick, but
them.
you guys might just be people having a difference of views, and having kind of
Yeah.
an unfortunate
I had a different friend
disagreement
who
right
would
now.
constantly fight with her friends, and then just like make up later. So I never wanted to like be too strong in siding with her when she was like talking shit about these other people, because I knew she was gonna be cool with them later. So I was like, all right, well,
Yeah,
this is
it's like,
gonna
yeah,
come
yeah,
back
your friend
later.
sounds like an asshole. Like when she's like complaining to you about a fight, and then like a few days later, she's like, "You called my girlfriend an
Yeah,
asshole. You
me
called
and
my
the
friend an
bestie.
asshole."
10 minutes
Yeah.
later. I think ultimately what I'm saying is I never thought I would like have the stance of the because again, like we talked about earlier, when we're growing up on like the computer or video games or whatever, the older generation says like, oh, that'll rot your brain. It's like, yeah, okay. But now we're at a point where there are legitimately like harmful things mentally about having certain feedback from your phone constantly. And I don't even mean just like, oh, being on your phone all the time is bad. I just do think the commodification of people is sort of dangerous, because like a dating app where
Hmm.
you're literally swiping on pictures of them, like you're not really reading the descriptions. It suits to objectify everyone.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it, a big frustration, I think, is the fact that yeah, you can filter by shit, and I think sometimes people will really narrow their fucking scope,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I mean, there's something about I can understand. I guess when I think about it, I don't think I'm too bothered by it. But the idea of like, oh, let me filter the guys on Tinder by filter out anyone under 5'10", like something about that, definitely seems like a character flaw, in my opinion. I mean, I guess you can have a preference. I guess
I don't think there's anything
I
wrong with having a
like
preference. I guess that
yeah,
there's a key for every lock, and
yeah.
it sometimes goes into the territory of fetishization, and you don't want to go there. But if you're insecure about your weight or your height, or the way your face looks, what you learn in growing up is that there are people that probably have a fetish for your exact thing, right? Whether it be that you're overweight.
Okay.
I've seen like groups of people on Twitter that are really into like their tags on Twitter will be like gap tooth lover or something. People that are like really into the idea of like you're like having that gap tooth. And I understand it. That's a really cute look. I think there is someone out there for everyone. And we do sort of have the male gaze, and I think we talked about this, or maybe I talked about this with someone else in the Nintendo Switch weekend. The male gaze of growing up with these Hollywood stories of the ripped guy or the girl that looks like a model or whatever, and it's not realistic. It's not what people look like. It's also not really what a lot of people want to see in their partner anyway. Most people want to date Shrek, and that is awesome for me.
I
But
was
there are,
actually surprised. It's like this is an adult show. You know, there I this you know this sounds, I don't know how bigoted this sounds. I was surprised like how much girls like chubby guys. Like it's not a thing that every girl's into, but I assumed like that was not a thing that like girls liked at
that's
all.
what I'm telling you, man. That's that high school brain, that Hollywood, that male gaze, like getting into you. Speaking of the male gaze, as in GAYS, also love fat dudes. Love a fat hairy
Oh
dude.
yeah, yeah, they yeah, no, I mean that's why I always assume like okay, the whole joke of it's like oh that guy's like attractive in like a gay guy way, but not like a straight girl way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. There's different types for people. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, there's obviously, well, my thing is always like, maybe I don't ever want to come across like, oh man, caring isn't cool, because I think you can care about anything. I think it's important to have issues that are important to you. However, I've always said like, the beautiful romance, love of your life, whatever, it's probably just gonna fall in your lap more often than not. Like, I don't think you're really gonna seek it out and find it. So I think this is all decent advice for relationships, or just like, I think ultimately you need to love yourself. But also, when you're in a relationship, the relationship should be a very high priority. But when you're not in a relationship, your highest priority should not be finding a relationship. It should
Yeah,
be
I
bettering
know people
yourself.
that are like, oh man, once I have a girlfriend, once you say that, dude, you're setting yourself up for like failure. I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you're already well, first of all, I think if you're daydreaming, well, I mean, daydreaming in the first place about like a theoretical relationship, it can already be a little bit a little bit dangerous because you might set yourself up for expectations that can't be fulfilled. I've had situations where another person gets like really obsessed with me for a period of time because
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just kind of become a person that they really kind of want to get to know better. And because of that, they start, I think, imprinting personality traits and things onto me that they kind of want me to have, but don't really know for sure that I have. It's actually funny. I won't spill the details too much, but
Sure.
there was a girl who runs a pretty popular Instagram meme account. It's kind of funny.
That's beautiful.
Um, probably has like a few like maybe like 200,000 followers now. She got really into me for a few weeks, and
Yeah.
she well so she said she was like complimenting me. She was kind of flirting with me,
Mm-hmm.
and the second day I'd ever known her, she said like, "Oh, I know you'll never hurt me. All the guys I've really known before, they always leave me. They always leave me." Like she's
Ugh,
saying that shit to me, and I wasn't saying like, "Oh yeah, baby, I didn't even say that."
you're
And
right.
wouldn't you know, like 2 or 3 weeks later, she was telling me, "I thought you said you'd never hurt me," and I'm like, "No, I didn't. You
Yeah,
said that."
I don't know
And
you.
frankly, I kind of recoiled a little bit because that's not a thing you say to someone the day you meet them or the day after you meet them.
Yeah,
And that's to say that, occasionally people get in these situations where I think they get too excited about another person and they stop being realistic with themselves.
you start envisioning a life together.
You start envisioning a life and you fill in the blanks, the things you don't know about this person, the things you're not sure of yet, with what you want. And I guess kind of adding on to that, if it's not even a specific person that you know that you're kind of imprinting all these kinds of fantasies onto, you're just thinking about like having the perfect girlfriend who does all the things that you want. You're
Hmm.
not I don't think you're going to end up happy. And it goes the other way. I mean, it goes for well, any orientation, to be honest. I see it all over where people kind of
Yeah, I know people who would
like
rather be unhappy in a relationship than not be in a relationship.
yeah.
And I think the most important thing to being an adult is learning how to be single. I had a lot of
Yeah.
practice, so I'm
Oh
down
yeah.
with it. But
I mean, yeah. I think one of the things that I learned as a teenager, not even through relationships, is just kind of how to have a good time without getting on someone else's nerves. And what I mean by that is that, I guess for me personally, and I probably do it. I probably am more hesitant about it than I should be. I've never wanted to be like annoying or take up too much time from other people. So, I've always been kind of a recluse. I'm kind of a workaholic, so I do a lot of my own thing.
yep, me too.
And for what it's worth, I think in a lot of ways that keeps like really needy people out of my life. And probably that's probably a good thing, because if my own space is a problem for other people, then I don't think it's going to work out with them.
Hmm.
As sad as that sounds, because I kind of do my own thing. I don't initiate as much as other people do,
That's what always
and
turned me off on the idea of a relationship. Is every time I would think. That's why for so long I thought like, oh, it's not really for me. That every time I would think about like having someone in my space or having someone around all the time, I was like, oh God, I don't want to. I don't want to have someone around all the time. But now I found a
Mhm.
person who like I think is just better to have in a room. Makes my life easier, makes me better, makes the world better. And I, for
Yeah.
the longest time, thought that like, oh God, I don't want to have to. I like my alone time too much. But now I realize like what people were talking about is like when you find the right person that you want to spend every hour just doing monotonous stuff. And I think that's another really important thing to develop is parallel play, is being able to like not do anything with a person and still feel fulfilled. And I've always been like that, even outside of romantic relationships, is whenever I was with a group of people and everyone's like, oh, let's do mini golf or bowling or go-karting or go to the beach or like go to this whatever, an event or something. The thing I always wanted to do was like, oh, we should all like gather around the TV and watch something. Like that's my
Yeah.
favorite social interaction, is just watching stuff with people. Like kind of
I
just being
genuinely would
boring.
prefer. I don't like activities that much.
Mhm.
I think on some level, maybe I'm impatient. Maybe I'm kind of, temperamental. I think there's just a lot of things that my attention fades really quickly, and a lot of things quickly become more of an annoyance to me than an actual kind of pleasure to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I went mini golfing with a couple of friends the other day. That wasn't like a few weeks ago.
It
It wasn't
is
that bad.
fun.
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
just
it could be
saying
fun.
I
It could be
really
fun.
like just watching stuff with people. That's probably my favorite thing
Yeah.
to do with people, maybe next to like playing video games. But it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, like, I think overall what we're going over is you need to be. I think constantly being in relationships throughout. I don't want to say like stunts you, but it does a little bit. Like from high school into college and then onwards, that you're as soon as you get out of a relationship, you're immediately like, oh man, I need to like date someone right now. And I've known a couple people like this. I've known someone who's very close to me, who she doesn't really, or she didn't really have a lot of her own friends, but she would just kind of envelop whoever her boyfriend's friends were, and that would become her friend group. And I would always tell her like every time, like, like when you break up, they're all gonna go with him. Like, you're not gonna have any friends. You got to make friends of your own. And obviously, nobody wants to hear the term "when you break up" because when you're in it, you're
Yeah.
like, this is gonna last forever. But I think a young adults watching us, because I think it is. I have to assume it's mostly young adults, or even if you're like older teenagers or something. You have to be okay with being single for a while. You have to focus on things that are more integral to you as opposed to being a unit. And I think that's the other thing that turned me off on the idea when I was younger, just like younger than this year, the first person I ever dated, was the idea of ceasing to become a person and then becoming a unit, right? Like a family, a couple, or whatever. Because every time I had seen it in front of me, it always like you kind of lose parts of yourself. But I think I'm bragging, or I'm braggadocious. I'm going on a tangent here that like I'm in a relationship now that I love because it's two people in a relationship and not like a couple, if that makes any sense. I thought that like being in a
What makes
relationship
you
would.
think that? Not like challenging you. I'm just kind of curious, like how you
I think I just always had
what
the
that
negative
feels like.
idea that like being in a relationship was like a high commitment and it was difficult and that it would have to like take time out of my other passions. But no, it's just now I
Mm.
just go on more dates while also doing what I do, you know? I
Yeah,
I
that's
think
the
because of my
I'm
job, I'm like, man, if I wanted to go out there and pitch myself to someone I want to date, it's like, hey, I spend every day in my computer, like in my office editing videos, and when I'm not editing, I'm live on Twitch once a day throughout the entire week. I'm always doing this stuff. That's a hard pitch to sell, but if somebody already likes me, like I'm just adding additional dates on top of that.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it because honestly, I am not one to stand on ceremony, and I'm kind of passionate about a lot of things that people do together just not being fun. Probably to a fault. I mean, there are things about me that it's like I'm not going to the beach. I'm not
That's
doing that.
fair. I really don't like sand. I don't like the ocean either. I'll go to the beach just to like relax, I guess, because my family's always gone there. And I find it like nostalgic more than anything now. And I think that's
Hmm.
where like family vacations come from. Is it's less about enjoying the vacation and more about like, oh, remember when we went here when you were little? It just becomes that.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think that's there was a point I was gonna make. I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah, I always thought relationships were hard because everyone always says that they're hard, but I don't. They don't have to be hard. It's actually quite easy. Yeah, I think you just need to be able to have a discussion, to converse. You need to be someone who's easy to talk to. And I'm glad I've never been in the quote dating scene, maybe in like late high school. Cause and again, maybe it's another example of what we were talking about earlier. Like we have this idea of what children are just because of the internet. Maybe children aren't actually like that. Maybe the situation isn't actually like this. But every time I see people talking about dating on my TikTok feed, it sounds miserable. Everyone sounds like they hate each other, like they hate going on dates, like they hate dating. And my thing to that is always just like, why do you do it then? Like you don't need to do
Mm.
that.
Ask yourself the question, like, is this worth it?
Yeah. But that really comes back to the same point of do you love a person or do you want to be in a relationship? And if your
Yeah.
idea is just like, oh, I need to be, and I feel for them. I'm not saying this to like be mean or whatever, but like there's a lot of people who are taught from a young age, like, yeah, you go to college and then you meet your wife and then you get married and you have kids. And for them, they believe the clock is ticking and they're like, oh, I have to find the love of my life in college. So they settle for whoever is the least worse because they think they have to.
Yeah. And I wonder, I don't know. I was about to say something, but I don't actually. I mean, this is just me kind of like like shooting the breeze. I'm not 100% sure.
That's what a
I
podcast is,
genuinely
brother.
wonder. Well, I guess because do a lot. I feel I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people just kind of date just so they can have sex, or just kind of have like
Yeah.
just straight up like
At the
maybe
behest
not.
of
I
getting
don't
into
know.
too many details, I've never really been a casual person. I tried doing it, like I thought I could, but I really can't. I get too attached. I'm not much of the
Mm.
casual market.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess like maybe I'm wrong. I just kind of think I can definitely imagine people like someone kind of not wanting to kind of do a hookup, but still kind of having trying to pursue a relationship
Yeah.
for just like making an arrangement to have sex
Mm-hmm.
with another person. But
That's
I'm not
fine as
100%
long
sure
as
about
everyone in
that.
that relationship is like
Yeah, I mean,
understands the terms. I think some people can get pretty hurt by it, but I think if you're both on the same page. The other thing, and
yeah.
this is the last thing I'll say about relationships, because I'm talking about other people's shit, but this is something I've heard. I think I'm mainly just kind of soured on the idea because I have predominantly female friends. Like I'd say it's probably like an 80-20 split. It's because this is another like preference thing. I just prefer the company of women, just because I always grew up like that, just with my sisters and my mom. And I don't know, they understand me a little more. That I have heard on multiple different occasions, I'm talking like counting on a handful of times, of someone, normally a woman, sharing her interests about something, talking about something she's passionate about, whether it be a video game, a movie, a show, or whatever. Or just any sort of like neurodivergent interest, like very deep focus on something. And then we'll be talking about it, and they'll be so excited, and they'll be like, yeah, my boyfriend doesn't really like when I talk about this. It's like, your special interest, he doesn't like when you talk about the things you like. I've heard that multiple times, and it always like completely dumbfounds me. And again, like no smoke to these women, it's not their fault, but the idea of being with someone, of sharing your life, that doesn't even like, not, they don't need to like the same things that you, but don't like when you talk about the stuff you like, that's so strange to me.
I'll say though, and this is not me, I don't know these specific situations, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's like not that big of a deal. It's more of just kind of like an eye roller, because when you're dating someone, to my understanding, especially when, let's say for example, you and your partner go out to dinner with another person or another couple or whatever, and the goal during that date is more to interact with the other couple as opposed to your partner. So you'll often say things that your partner has heard over and over again. I've heard people talk about like, oh yeah, I fucking hate when my, spouse tells that one story because I've heard it a million times. It could be a great story, but I've heard it. I know how it goes. I know the twists. So
but even
I mean,
that, like, I still think you would want to hear the story just because it's fun the way they tell it.
Maybe, but I don't know. I mean,
I guess I haven't been married for a decade yet.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is like the people I heard talk about that, it was like on a podcast, and they're like in their 60s and they're married. Yeah. And I mean, it's like I think it's like, okay, it's not the end of the world if there are things you like about your significant other, but there are also a couple things that make you roll your eyes or kind of annoying. I think if you spend a lot of time with anyone, you're gonna have that.
Well, I think there are quirks, but the thing, it just stands out to me is like, well, this is, I guess because maybe I'm just so into my interest and it kind of just is my whole life. Like whenever I'm talking to people, it always boils down to TV, movies, games, internet stuff, like all of that. And I can't imagine like the person for me, it's always just like the thing that always confused me before I was in a relationship, that like now I understand like how much you would want to have someone around. The idea of like someone living in your space, like sharing your life, but also like doesn't like when you like the things you like. That just sounded miserable to me.
No, definitely. Yeah, I can see it that way. I guess like, I mean, I think I said my piece. I can imagine occasionally like them bringing up the, a show they like or whatever can sometimes be a bit of an like, oh, okay, I've heard this before. But ideally that's like not a big deal.
Yeah, I think if your partner likes something that you don't like, and that's definitely happened to me before, like something I don't necessarily fuck with, I love hearing them talk about it because I can tell that they really like it. Like I think to me passion is the most attractive thing. Like just being passionate about anything. And there have been a lot of people who were more or less sort of my type that like maybe I could have ended up with that just had no drive to do anything. And I don't mean like, oh, you got to get out there, you got to get a job. I just mean like a passion to do anything. Like they were like,
is there a thing that you're trying to do every
Yeah,
single day?
I would get along with them because they were chill, and it's like, yeah, I'm chill, I'm just chilling out. But that chill would eventually just boil over into, okay, so you don't want to do anything. And I can understand getting burnt out on wanting to work every day of your life. Again, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't mean like you got to get off your ass and get a job. I mean like you have to have drive to do something. You don't have to create something, but just to do something. Like what do you want to do ever? Ultimately, to put a cap on the first half of this episode of Switch to Ultra is it will find you. The perfect relationship will fall in your lap. At some point, you don't got to worry about time. The thing I always tell people is my grandparents, who I've only known as my grandparents my entire life, who were fantastic grandparents, who are fantastic grandparents, who would always take me out, and were there for me and my sister's lives. They met in their 60s, and they got married a year after I was born. You could find the love of your life when you're like 60, 70. Sure, I understand you want to find them sooner so you can spend the most amount of time with them, or maybe you don't. You also don't have to. Like, your main priority in life should be living your life to the fullest. And then, if you find someone that you love, you share that life with them. It doesn't need to be that your life is tied to this person. On top of all of that, Oh, no, go ahead. Closing remark
No,
on
I'm saying well put.
relationships. Oh, yeah. Well, now we also have the purpose of Switch 2 Ultra, which is in between. I think this was actually the day of, or maybe the day right after, or maybe a couple days after the last episode of Switch 2 Ultra that held on last Monday. We were talking about the prospect of a June Direct, of a Nintendo Switch 2 Direct after the Summer Games Fest, talking about a lot of new announcements coming out for the Switch. But with the advent of something like the Nintendo Today app, or the way they've been drip feeding information, like recently they said they delayed the Zelda movie to like 2 weeks later. I don't know why. I don't know how you would even project that, or why you wouldn't do it later, or why you wouldn't just say like, oh, it's delayed indefinitely. But I mean, if it is delayed 2 weeks and then it comes out perfectly fine and stable, then I guess they were right. But I don't know what would cause it. Anyway, it seems more and more like we might not. And I don't want to say vehemently that we won't get a Direct, but when we're getting little snippets of information just randomly on the Nintendo Today app and then later posted to their YouTube or Twitter, like this was posted a couple days after the last episode of Switch 2 Ultra, which is, let me mute this. It's called Splatoon Raiders, I believe. Have you played any Splatoon game?
I've played Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2.
So this trailer, it is sort of like, ironically, a more Summer Games Fest Xbox-esque trailer, where it seems to just be a CG trailer, and we don't really see any gameplay. This is talking about Splatoon 3 updates. So it seems that rather, instead of getting a Splatoon 4 to use a lot of the Switch 2 features, and maybe we still will get that. It seems like they're adding a lot of weapons and stages to Splatoon 3. I don't know enough about Splatoon 3 competitively to, like, know what all this means. However, I do know that this isn't adding, like, Switch 2 capability like that of mouse controls. However, this initial trailer, like, for Splatoon Raiders, these first 2 minutes, this is just a CG trailer. And I really don't know what it could play like, because not to compare it to other series, but if you think about like a Mario spinoff, like a Mario sports game or a Mario Kart, or a Pokemon spinoff, that those games control completely different. That it seems like this game might just control like Splatoon, but be a campaign. Maybe it's like a tower defense. Yeah, this little bit of gameplay here, if this is in fact gameplay, and maybe we can't really judge it off of this, but this just looks like a game mode in Splatoon 3. Like, I don't know what this game could control. Like, this looks like it controls like Splatoon. Maybe it's like an open world. I don't want to say open world, but like an open RPG shooter. But it's weird that it's specifically titled as a spin-off, because it seems like it controls more or less like the Splatoon series.
It looks like just a Splatoon game. I mean, I guess the world design, because I feel like most of the Splatoon campaigns so far have been kind of in like abstract environments that look more kind of like more open.
People really sleep on the Splatoon campaigns, but I think they're really fun platforming, because I think people focus on the shooter aspect if they don't like Splatoon, like playing online. But I think getting the campaign is enough, and most shooters don't even have campaigns nowadays. But yeah, we don't know anything about Splatoon Raiders. We don't even have a release date for it. But on top of that announcement, we also got I think this was shown off on the Nintendo Today app first, but this was actually announced earlier today, or maybe late yesterday, that there will be a Donkey Kong Bananza Direct on Wednesday. So that will take place between this episode of Switch 2 Ultra. We talked about obviously we saw art of Diddy Kong, of the new design for Diddy Kong, on the Nintendo Today app, and we thought maybe it could either be in Bananza or it could be in Mario Kart. And we know now that there are no secret characters in Mario Kart World, at least not yet. Maybe I saw some people speculate when it comes to Mario Kart World, is it could be like a spirit board situation with Smash Bros. Where, do you remember when like a new game would come out and then they would add spirits to the game for like a little event to coincide with that game coming out?
Yeah, I hope they do that. That'd be sweet.
Well, the reason that Donkey Kong and Pauline don't have a lot of costumes in Mario Kart World is because they're going to get more with this, because obviously Smalline, the little small character we don't know anything about, that was accidentally leaked on the Korean website. Potential King K. Rool, ***, all those accounts are going crazy for. And we don't know what that new design for Diddy Kong is being used for. So I feel like there is a lot we can learn about Bananza, more so than we could for the Mario Kart Direct, if I'm being honest.
I feel like there's a lot of things they're still a little bit tight-lipped about when it comes to Bananza.
Yeah.
So
Deli, hello? I heard Deli for a second.
Hello.
Do you have any strong feelings about Donkey Kong Bananza?
None at the moment.
Whoa.
Still taking it in, still processing everything.
Right. I can't believe that happened.
I know, right?
It just happened too.
My hands are still shaking. My paws are still shaking.
I'm shaking in my boots. Well, I guess that's just a little precursor of what's going to come, I suppose, when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2 announcements or news. With that, we will cover Bananza next week in the direct, because I do think we're going to get a lot of information. And while we could speculate and postulate on what that information is going to be, I think it'd be better suited if we just talk about it after, because when it came to the Mario Kart Direct, we didn't really have a whole lot to say. That being said, last week we talked about the new version of E3, right? The Summer Games Fest, Xbox's presentation, PlayStation's presentation, because that event doesn't really exist anymore. And I remember, as a young lad, a young little tuber, watching all these YouTubers, like Switchy and his plush videos back in the day, that there would be two major events to cover, or worth covering, in the summer. And they would be E3 and Comic-Con. And I remember there was a period of time where I would legitimately watch all of the Comic-Con panels when it came to cartoons I liked, even if a lot of them were colossally boring or really hard to watch. And I think Comic-Con is still in fact happening, but it seems like we've gotten a lot of basically a direct's worth information when it comes to cartoons over the last week between previous streams. Now, Della, have you heard about any of this?
Any of it? I mean, I guess so. By transitive property, I've heard of some of it at least.
Oh, through osmosis, yes. Well, because I think there were a number of announcements that just happened individually on their own by like larger companies. Like I think I'm pretty sure Amazon Prime just announced 2 shows coming to their network, and that was the Steven Universe spinoff Lars of the Stars, and I think the new Panty and Stocking, which I don't know nearly as much about as I do know about Steven. And I feel like that's kind of my Donkey Kong Bonanza. I haven't quite let it settle in yet that there is going to be more Steven Universe. I think because I thought it was a foregone conclusion, but I fucking loved that show as a kid, and I forgot how much I loved it.
Honestly, they're doing a Malcolm in the Middle reboot as well, but Dewey's not coming back.
Are there a lot of people not coming back for that?
Ago.
I wouldn't be surprised. I know Frankie's coming back. I assume the actress for Lois is coming back.
From Family Guy, of course.
I think they're all back except Dewey.
Yeah.
He's at college in the series. I haven't finished all of Malcolm in the Middle. I've watched a decent amount of it. Again, it's like one of the shows you would just fall asleep on the couch watching. I don't think I watched it from front to back. But I do know how it ends. And I think it's one of those shows that has an ending that, like, if you follow up with it with Malcolm as an adult, I feel like it sort of sours that idea a little bit. Do you guys have the same stance on this?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, there have been times where like a show comes back after a long period of time, and something about the magic of like the ending it previously had kind of goes away.
Yeah.
I think because especially when things are left up to interpretation, you kind of imagine the characters graduating from that kind of set status quo that they're always living inside of.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, next time, then they just come back 20 years later, and they kind of talk about the same things, kind of have the same relationships with each other, et cetera, et cetera.
My thing is that a lot of the shows,
Something
like, it sort of has to stunt the characters because they have to come back and do the same thing, that it's sort of sad to be like, oh, I guess they're still doing this. That's how the iCarly reboot made me feel, is that like they're in their 30s now and they're just doing iCarly again.
I remember Community. I mean, Community didn't have like a reboot, but it actually might. I think they're still trying to do a movie. But like, I remember, or maybe they're not doing the movie. I don't know. 6 seasons in the movie.
So as far as everyone's concerned, there is a movie script and it is happening, asterisk. But I am not as faithful or hopeful as I was because that kind of came out in 2020 when everyone was doing their big reunion podcast and nobody was working on anything else. And I do believe that a movie script exists and that the cast wants to do it. I don't believe, however, that it is in fact going to happen. Like, I know it's been commissioned by Peacock or something, but I don't know. I don't even know if we necessarily
teasing it for like a decade on and off, though.
Yeah.
It's like,
but they've all done so many. It's cartoonish how big everyone on that cast has gotten, or how important or how high their star has grown. Not even like
Larry,
the leads of the show. Yeah, well, I mean, listen, that has more cultural relevance. I don't know, but
Ashay.
Alison Brie has her own A24 films with her husband Gillian Jacobs on The Bear, and now she's got her own like Invincible spin-off show. Obviously, Donald Glover. I keep forgetting
that she's Adam Eve.
Yeah, Donald Glover is a huge star. And even recently, like, the on-set composer for Community, Ludwig Göransson, now he's doing the soundtrack for Creed, Black Panther, and recently Sinners. And I think that's, even if you don't think that's the best movie of the year, I think it has to be the best soundtrack of the year.
Mm-hmm.
He did the score for Oppenheimer, for Tenet. Like, even your And then like directors they had on set, like whether aside from Dan Harmon, like the Russo brothers were there. There's
I think I remember watching an episode and seeing fucking Joe and Anthony Russo
yeah.
in the credits. I'm like, what the hell?
Directed the
Like,
paintball episodes. That's why it's a
makes
video I
sense.
want to make someday, but I don't know if anyone else would care about it. How there's sort of like a Rick and Morty Community to Marvel pipeline, where a lot of people who wrote episodes of Rick and Morty or worked on Community immediately just like went into making Marvel stuff.
Does Dan Harmon have anything to do with Marvel, or is that just like everyone else?
No, they brought him in as like
yeah.
a what's the term? When you're like just kind of there, they pay you to be there. A consultant. They brought him in as a consultant for Doctor Strange. And he tells a story on his live show podcast where he was just like walking around eating pizza, and every time they would show him something like Doctor Strange, he'd be like, "Yeah, it's kind of like Rick." And then he would just stop talking. So no
Dude,
real
that's the
connection
best
there.
job, just being paid to do nothing.
A consultant.
Yeah, anyway, the point I was going to make was that, well, I mean, season 4, people hate season 4 for a lot of reasons of Community.
Right.
But it's you know, like they kind of try and wrap up Jeff's little story with him graduating, and then oh yeah, he has to go back. And it's a little, also, I mean, the graduation ceremony was so phoned in, but oh yeah, now I mean you
It's all coming back to you
honestly,
now.
what I will say about Community is that I think they were kind of self-aware about it, because it's a very self-aware show, sometimes to a fault, I think some people would find. You can kind of tell that everyone was kind of aware that them still being at the community college in season 5 and 6 is a little bit forced and sometimes kind of annoying.
Especially with live action reboots where the characters are simply just doing the same thing. I've gone on record before that I've really changed my stance when it comes to cartoons going on forever. Because in the 2010s when I was like watching all these reviewers and part of that discussion sphere, it's like, yeah, just let Family Guy end, just let SpongeBob end, just let South Park end, so on and so forth. And people still say that about The Simpsons. But now I just don't. I think cartoon characters can live forever. Like, you know, imagine if they stopped if one day they're like, yeah, we don't want to do Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny anymore. I think these are characters and ideas that can live on forever. And I think it's better to have these cartoons, these steady jobs, especially when it's so hard to get animation work nowadays.
Yeah,
However, the other side of that, and I think there are maybe some people who will agree with me, who will then disagree and throw a fit when it comes to recasting. If you want these shows to keep going on, you need to be okay with recasting. And we haven't seen it for like a major cartoon as of late, other than like, you know, when it comes to characters doing offensive racial caricatures. But we did see when it came to Mario, and people were so pissed about that. I mean, even beyond Chris Pratt, like the idea of Charles Martinet, who's like 80, maybe, not being the voice of Mario anymore. 70. Yeah, he's 50. He's 40. Yeah. And that happened recently with a lot of the Mario Kart cast. But I think that I'm just picturing it in my head the day that like Tom Kenny retires or unfortunately passes, and then they cast a new SpongeBob, and then Twitter is like, this isn't what it was like when I was a kid. Like, I could picture it so very clearly, more so than I could picture any day of my life in my head, you know? I fear it will come. And I think people need to be more okay with recasting as long as the person getting recast isn't like shafted over.
I guess it's like that feeling that people are automatically shafted if they get recast. And the circumstances get really granular. Like, I like watching New Futurama was really like interesting because I grew up with that, and I even like I just love the Comedy Central run. Even like I was like, oh my god, yes, this is real. And watching Hulu-Rama was kind of different, and I was like, well, why does Fry sound like Lars? That is not how I remember it. And I'm kind of like, well, you know, I mean, it sounds different. I mean, I guess we could work with this. Also, I think it would be kind of messed up to replace Billy West, because Fry is literally based off a 20-year-old Billy West. Yeah. So I don't think you can really make that work. I think you should just let him take that role to the grave, for lack of a better word.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of characters that's why it's a lot harder when you're doing like when you see people doing like, oh, the cartoon impressions. They're doing the voices that are the easiest to do as voices, but then some characters are just like someone's voice. And I think famously, I could be getting this wrong, but they based Zab Brannigan off of Phil Hartman, or they wanted Phil Hartman to play him, but he passed. I'd say passed. He was murdered shortly before that, so they just had Billy West do his best Phil Hartman impression. And I think you can still do that. But when it comes to the way I feel when it comes to like I try not to be too like grading, or not grading as in GART, but GRDE, when it comes to any piece of art. Like, oh, this was 70% good, or a passing grade. This was 50% on the rotten scale. But I feel like when it comes to shows like South Park or Futurama or Always Sunny that are still making seasons, maybe, to this day, I think as long as a new season has 1 or 2 good episodes, not just like okay, but good episodes, then I'm on board, right? And Always Sunny and Futurama have been doing that, at least for me. Each season is mostly kind of meh to okay. None of them were like awful that I hated, but overall, as long as there's like 1 or 2 episodes, I'm like, I like that. And that happened recently with last night's episode of Rick and Morty. Like, I wasn't super loving the season. I think we're on episode 4 or 3 now. And the previous season, I actually did like a lot of it, like concurrently. But the most recent episode I did really like. And I think this season begets, I don't want to say like allows, because, you know, who am I to say like what can and can't exist, but at least excuses its existence for me because it has 1 or 2 good episodes. That's how I feel about a season of television, especially when seasons of television, when it comes to cartoons, are so slim nowadays anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to feel like, oh man, there's all these shows, it's going to take forever to watch them all. But I mean, a good amount of them you can knock out in a day.
Yeah. I mean, on the ranking, like, I still haven't finished season 3 of Jellystone or Stugo or Moon Girl, but I'd rather have that for a long period of time than have like, oh, you know, it's a 10 episode season. I guess we're going to talk about the animation news that happened in last week. I guess we can say that they have announced sort of, I don't want to say last minute because, you know, it's the summer now, but it seems like when it came to Smiling Friends seasons, I thought it was going to follow the even pattern, right? The pilot came out in 2020, season 1 was 2022, and season 2 was 2024. So I expected season 3 to be 2026. But obviously, like, the recent popularity after season 2, like, season 1 was popular, but season 2 was way more popular, at least from like an internet standpoint. I mean, yeah, I'm just going off of like,
I watched both seasons, but I didn't know like if season 2 did better or anything.
Well, the fact that like even my little sister was talking about how much she likes Glep, it's like, okay, this is breached the sphere a little bit. That I'm not surprised that there's gonna be a new season this fall, which is what they announced. Season 4 this fall, and then season 5 next year. By the way, I mean, one, I prefer having these seasons more regularly because it's popular, but also you can tell from both of the previous seasons had Halloween and Christmas specials, but they both aired in like spring or summer. So I'm glad it's finally airing in fall. Like, it's very clearly meant to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely am glad that it's coming out a little bit more often because, well, first of all, I mean, I guess I don't know how the show's made. I imagine actually there's a lot of time put into how it's animated as compared to a lot of other shows. So, I mean, I guess like, you know, 100 minutes of episodes coming out every 2 years isn't actually that insane. With the kind of, you know, I mean, yeah, because they're definitely very methodical to how they animate the show.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, having a yearly season for a while would be a lot, just as like, oh, there's more Smiling Friends to go around. And I think that they could we are not going to have to worry about a Smiling Friends shortage, at least for a long time.
I guess that's where like I don't want to say argument comes in, but rather the disagreement. And Deli knows a lot more about the quote industry than us. That the idea of like, are there less episodes because it's difficult to make a lot of episodes, or are there just less episodes because they aren't commissioning as much episodes? Like, when you see a 10-season episode, do you think like, oh, they could only make 10, or do you think like, well, they're only allowed to make 10? Like, they can only make as much as they are commissioned. Del, do you know anything about this? Like, is this a disagreement amongst audiences?
I don't think so. I mean, it's been the consistent stance of Zach and Mike that they do not want to, like, I guess, oversaturate the market with more Smiling Friends.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. And they've only been doing like 8-episode, 10-episode things.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's
like throughout, like Koala Man and YOLO, which just ended.
Yes.
When it really didn't have to, by the way. It could have gone on for a little bit longer. I would have appreciated that. But
I like YOLO.
Yeah, I like YOLO.
I think the average Adult Swim show being like, I think my thing is I don't want people to lose work, and I guess in a perfect world there would constantly be the next project to work on. But for me, I think 3 seasons for a cartoon is okay and average. However, YOLO is another example where each season was like 10 episodes. And I think that's why I push back a little bit on what Zach and Michael said about, obviously, like, it's years of their lives that they don't want to be doing the same thing. But the idea of overdoing it in comparison to something like The Simpsons, which they've brought up in previous panels, is like, how many episodes were in the first season of The Simpsons? It couldn't have been 10. And these are 11-minute installments. So I understand where they're coming from. Like, maybe 5 seasons is enough. But that's only, like, 55 episodes, which for an average, like, adult animated sitcom, that would be, like, 2 seasons, maybe over a couple years.
Yeah.
Point in time where, like, 26 episode seasons were the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull something up real quick. Simpsons.
Well, Deli, I just want to ask, like, is it more... Obviously, it's like objectively more difficult to make more episodes, but is it more of an issue of not having enough time or budget or manpower to create more than 10 to 13 episode seasons, or is it that people working on them would like to make 26 episode seasons, but they just aren't commissioned like that anymore?
There probably isn't enough money to go around. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think on a macro scale, it's not really like it's a matter of resource hoarding, really, because like multinational conglomerates have billions of dollars that they could throw at people any day. Mm-hmm. But right now, the market is just like scarcity, because there was just a bunch of stuff that happened the last 5 years. And now they don't want to do, like, we're already in like reboot hell throughout like the 2010s at points. But now it's everything, like, the state of things is going to shift at some point. We just don't know where. And that's where it gets the most scary. Mm-hmm. I don't think it would be impossible for Smiling Friends to get more. If anything, I feel like Adult Swim, in their current capacity, would probably be lobbying for more. But we don't really know what that's like unless one of the two guys like opines on it more. But I mean, do they have the resources? I don't know. I mean, Warner Bros. Discovery is kind of fucked up right now. I'm not even gonna.
I feel like we've been saying this for like 4 years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most. Sky is blue, grass is green. WBD is in a bind once again. Mm-hmm. Could they make more? Yeah, of course. Do they want to make more? I'm sure they do. Will they? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. I just mean,
but
like,
I would love to be wrong.
Yeah, if I'm publicly being like, I think there should be 26 episode seasons, does that come across as me being like, I don't want these, go back to work animators, I don't want them to see their families? Or is that like an average for most people that they're like, yeah, I would like to work more?
Question,
I think people want more, generally. But I mean, just attitudes have, I don't want to sound like some market analyst, because I'm really not. But,
right.
The attitudes have changed. I think streaming had its time in the sun, and I think the bubble might pop within the next decade or so, if that truly is like on the cards, because I do think people, like, they kind of understand what they lost with cable, and they're like, oh, okay, you know what, maybe we could have, because new Phineas and Ferb is was that just like 20 half hours, basically, like a season, and they dropped 10 of them last week on Disney Plus, and like the night before the drop, everybody I talked to that kind of like knew some about it were kind of confused. They were like, wait a minute, I thought this was airing weekly. And I'm like, but it is, but they're going to drop the first 10 now, like on streaming. And then over the next few weeks, they're going to air 2 of them at a time on Disney Channel. Yeah. And they're like, well, what? That doesn't
hilarious. It's like, okay, wow. So I guess I'm really not going to watch this on cable then. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I do kind of prefer that, though, because, like, obviously, if anyone's been watching the stuff along with me, I've wanted to watch Wild Pack. But I think it's one of those situations where they just added Rock, Paper, Scissors, the likes of Rock, Paper, Scissors, to Paramount because the season 1 finished airing like late last year, I believe. That you have to wait for the entire series to finish airing before it comes out on streaming. Ideally, in a perfect world, they would just release them weekly on streaming as well. And that's why the only reason I use the Disney Now app on my computer is just to watch like Stugo and Moon Girl and Chibiverse when they come out, even though they already have a streaming service for that. And I feel like it wouldn't be that difficult or like cause them any man hours, because something like, again, not to praise Warner Media because we've seen where that goes, but shows that air on Adult Swim will just be on Max the next day. I don't see why other streamers, I mean, maybe they will do it with Phineas, or they could have done it with Phineas and the other cartoons they don't care as much about, but I thought it was really annoying that whenever there was a Nickelodeon or Disney show that you have to wait for the season to finish airing before you even think about putting it on streaming.
Yeah, that's definitely annoying. I'm kind of glad that that's kind of becoming a thing of the past.
For some of them,
because,
it is.
Yeah.
I know for some of the Disney stuff, they batch it. So, like, I think Hamster and Gretel will split up a little bit,
Primos
and
was
like
too.
Molly McGee, like they
Yeah.
weren't necessarily like full season. Right, Primos, yeah. So it's not like impossible, but it is kind of like it's like, well, you got this one show from 2007 that specifically did well in part because you kind of piecemealed it out and you kind of knew how to like feed it to the masses, and now you're kind of just giving it to them all at once, and it's a very bingeable show, but it's like, well, don't you think you want this to last as long as possible?
Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a waste.
Well, do you think this is a Clone High situation, or do you think this is legitimately the show's second life? Because you're a special guest here on the Switch to Ultra podcast, but you're also the Phineas and Ferb guy, if you don't mind me saying.
I mean, I know everything and yet nothing. Dan Povenmire can rewrite the whole universe in one tweet, so really, 20 years worth of following the show doesn't mean shit.
Right.
in reality. What was the question?
Oh, do you think this is a second life for the show, or do you think this is going to be like 1 or 2 reboot seasons? Like, do you think there's a possibility that this runs just as long as the original incarnation?
In
Question.
in like years or like production cycles?
I'll say
'Cause I guess my
seasons, I
answer-
guess.
Seasons?
Yeah.
I think it'll be longer.
Interesting.
I-
Well, because the seasons
Wow,
are
okay.
shorter? Question mark?
No, I
Okay.
mean, I think I give Disney a lot of credit because Nickelodeon has kind of been out of like original animation for a while. Outside of preschool, they just don't really give it that much attention. And Cartoon Network, I mean, we already know what happened with them. We
Yeah,
don't really need to get into it today.
we definitely
But
will.
Disney, I'm sure it'll be a long podcast, but Disney has been trucking for a long time, just pumping out originals that didn't make, for all intents and purposes. Okay, I do have to give them some points for keeping Primos around. They fumbled it. Okay, they absolutely fumbled the bag
Mhm.
on the rollout because all they needed to do was release the first episode, and I think that would have changed the dynamic. But still, they didn't need to consider a second season at all. And the fact that they did that is craziness.
Mhm.
But this is a new
Primos.
age.
All I
This is a
really,
new area.
I hardly know.
all
It.
I really.
Ripping pepperonis, ripping Primos, ripping Primos.
Switchy, what have you heard about Primos? I guarantee I know what you've
Well,
heard, but go ahead.
Oh, I remember like when it was first being shown off, people were like making jokes about about like Hispanic representation.
Mhm. I don't know if it was jokes. I mean, maybe it was, but I think a lot of people took it very seriously.
Oh yeah. I mean, I thought what I thought was like, yeah, this show looks kind of ugly. I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. I don't think I wasn't too keen on the art style, but I think honestly I'm kind of picky with animation art styles in general. But I didn't think much of it, and just because of the kind of negative response I'd seen, yeah, I assumed it'd be gone after the first season, to be honest.
I think I really love Primos, but I think that for me, I don't mind a show being ugly because then at least it stands out. But I don't like when a show kind of looks like a generic art style that could belong to anything else. And that's why I was so shocked by how much I love Royal Crackers. And if I have to be the Royal Crackers guy, I will. Every other person that has a platform on the internet, I beg everyone to watch Royal Crackers. I tell everyone to. I love that show because I have to, but also it's just a show I really like. That, like, if you showed it to me, I mean, when they did show it to me on the Adult Swim April Fool's broadcast, I think in 23 or maybe 22, it didn't look like anything interesting to me. And Adult Swim was kind of in a lull period at the time anyway. That I'm like, this just looks like the generic adult animated sitcom you see on FX or Comedy Central. I think it's a lot better than that, but I do think the art style doesn't really do it any favors by looking very generic. And I think I would rather something be quote unquote ugly than look like everything else. Like, I don't even necessarily like Oh My God Yes, but I'm glad that a show like that exists currently. And I hope that also gets a second season. I think 2 seasons is the baseline.
It's a good egg. It deserves more.
I'm excited to see where it goes. Maybe it'll win me over at some point. But I think there's discussion to be had there. I mean, I believe that there's a lot of shows nowadays that don't really have time to find their footing because if they're not immediately hits by season 1, it just can't, and I don't think that's fair. However, I do think that there are cartoons that had very long seasons, like 2 to 3 seasons, that each had like 26 episodes. I think for the average cartoon, that's decent. And again, I don't want to advocate for shows getting canceled and for people losing their jobs. But when I hear something about like YOLO ending, maybe getting canceled isn't the correct term, but like ending, I love YOLO. I really like that show, but it doesn't bother me as much because I at least, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I at least have faith that like Adult Swim is going to continue making shows. And that's a lot of the announcements we have here today, or like in the last week. But it's interesting that you levy that credit to Disney Channel, because that was kind of the turning point for me. Is throughout most of my life and adolescence, I was a Cartoon Network guy, Cartoon Network kid, the Cartoon Network. And then in 2020, BoJack and Steven both ended. And obviously everything shut down. And I was like, dude, I really don't have anything right now. Like, there's nothing keeping me there. There's nothing keeping me bringing back. Like, all the shows that I want to watch on Cartoon Network aren't even really showing on Cartoon Network anyway. So what am I going to watch? And then during the pandemic, during that summer, I got really into the Owl House and then Amphibia and Big City Greens and DuckTales. And then later I watched Molly McGee and Kif and Haley's on it. And then later after that, it was Primos and Stugo. That I think, like, in the 20s, this decade, Disney Channel has really won me over when it comes to animation, more so than Cartoon Network. Granted, there are Cartoon Network properties I still like more, but I think the first 2 decades of my life, it was Cartoon Network for me, and then it shifted in the 2020s. I don't know if you guys have experienced anything similar.
What was your stance like in between Gravity Falls and Owl House? Because there was a lot of stuff that... It was mainly Disney XD stuff, though.
Yeah, we only had Disney XD, like, in the living room, because it was, like, additional channels you needed to pay for. And I spent a lot of time watching TV in my room. So, like, Teen Nick and Nicktoons, which is now Nick SpongeBob, and Disney XD, I couldn't watch in my room, like, upstairs. So it was, for me, it was just Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. I think even the Hub channel was, like, in the higher... Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe it was the big four.
I never had the Hub on my TV, which always sucked.
I would go to like grandparents' house and they would have the Hub, and then I would like watch like fucking Littlest Pet Shop in front of them, and they'd be like, "Are you supposed to be watching this?"
No joke. The Hub introduced me to Animaniacs.
That's beautiful. But now
I know, right?
I mean, you're right. Like, everything's split between multiple streamers. The Animaniacs reboot was one that, like, those are more Looney Tunes adjacent characters that I'm like, yeah, just have these voice actors play these characters forever. Let them exist in other spheres. I think when it comes to, like, revitalizing cartoons or giving them, like, something modern to do, I think a movie is always a better situation. Nickelodeon was doing it for a while, but then they eventually just stopped doing them. I don't know if they weren't doing well or if they just did stop wanting to do them. And I know that Courage had, like, that strange Scooby-Doo movie, but I think if there's a cartoon that I want to see, like, a little bit more of, I don't want to see a modern reboot and, like, additional seasons. I'd rather just see, like, a movie, and if that does well, then do another movie. It's the equivalent of these straight-to-DVD movies. And...
I kind of agree. Mm-hmm. I kind of agree. I think just because a lot of the time it kind of lets the series and the characters come back, but with kind of a new taste to them or kind of a new like way of kind of presenting the show, which can often be interesting.
Disappointed by the fact that the miniseries model never really went anywhere.
Yeah.
Like Cartoon Network did a few, and I think they turned out well. I will always love Long Live the Royals, but it's like they didn't, for streaming, it seems like that would be the optimal way to present a lot of these. Without running out the clock, and it's like nobody ever did anything. Like, if you're gonna ask me whether I want several more seasons of this show that had 200 episodes, or if I want like a miniseries that's a bit more granular, maybe focuses on something I haven't seen before, I'm gonna pick the miniseries.
Yeah,
I'm picking all day, every day.
Well, because, I mean, accidentally like, or otherwise, every series is sort of a miniseries now. But there are 10 episode seasons that just don't get any more seasons.
Yeah,
I think also going for like a movie or a mini series kind of makes the new kind of installment not as immediately comparable to the initial run, which in some ways can be a good thing. It kind of, as I said, I think it lets the world be explored in a slightly different way with a slightly different pace. First of all, but it kind of makes it a little bit less immediately just kind of seeming derivative of the original run, as I said, because I think. It seems that a lot of times when shows come back, one of the big discussions is like, oh yeah, they're just doing the same shit they did 15 years ago, which I don't know. I mean, I feel I could be wrong. It seems that I think I'd prefer the discussion to be a little different as opposed to immediately it's always being about how much it's the same or how different it is, or like if it's just kind of a slightly watered down version of the initial run. I don't know.
I remember hearing that about I promised I would stop talking about it, but here we are. About Learning with Pibby. in context of Adult Swim, and I think I said this in a video, that people are like, oh, it wouldn't work as a full series, it should just be like a little mini series. And my response to that was always like, well, an average season of a cartoon nowadays, especially on Adult Swim, is like 10-11 minute segments. Like, that's basically already a mini series. Like, I don't know how it would get more mini than that. Granted, I don't think Pibby would work anyway, but I think it's weird what they did with it in general, but that's where we stand on that. I was a little more optimistic late last year when I made my Adult Swim is Bright video, when it came to Adult Swim and animation. And I do still feel that way. But in the context of Cartoon Network, when it came to like Adult Swim sort of carrying on shows on Cartoon Network and using them more as like adult nostalgia, and that came through in that one block, Checkered Past, which they would air, I believe, weekdays at like 5 p.m. before Adult Swim, and would just have reruns of Samurai Jack, of Courage, of Ed, Edd and Eddy. And I think this goes hand in hand with sort of the bubble bursting, for lack of a better term, when it comes to streaming, is there is sort of like, there is something to grasp, something, and this was 2023, there is something lost in not having blocks of television. Like, instead of just, because you could just put on any cartoon and be like, yeah, just like, you know, binge this, put this on in the background, have all the episodes play. But sometimes you want to have it cycle through multiple different cartoons and have little bumpers, and sometimes even commercials. I never thought I would miss commercials. And Checkered Past, I would legitimately, I don't even have cable. I just use my parents' like Xfinity login on the Adult Swim website. And now the simulcast tab is hidden, but if you still put /simulcast at the end of the link, you can find it. I don't know why they hid it. I guess they're trying to move people away from that. And I never knew why other networks didn't really do that. Like, allow you to watch stream versions of their broadcast online. And now there are other streamers that are trying to reinvent cable. I think that there's sort of an untapped market when it comes to these blocks and these bumpers that everyone holds up very nostalgically, specifically like the CN City era of Cartoon Network, that are probably just exist in someone's library somewhere that aren't really posted officially in HD anywhere. And I think a streamer would be a good place to put that. Even like, there are places like Paramount that have live streams going concurrently where it's like, oh, it's just airing SpongeBob nonstop. And that's what Nick SpongeBob is doing. But they announced recently that I think this month or either July, they're going to be ending Checkered Past, and I really don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Did either of you guys?
It was like,
oh, no, go ahead.
I think it was the lead-in. What were they doing? Because like Adult Swim has these like weird cycles when they lose one of the Fox cartoons, and they kind of go into like panic mode trying to experiment with what works. And I think the running theory right now is that, you know, they had like 5 p.m. and I don't think they've ever had 5 p.m. before, if I'm not mistaken.
They have not, no.
But yeah, and it's like, well, shit. We don't got Family Guy. We don't got X, Y, and Z. You know, why don't we just air some of their shit? You know, let's just throw it on. Let's see what happens. And it worked. You know, the viewership went up quite significantly, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe it'll be like a seasonal thing from now on. But it is interesting. They're ending it not even like a year into its run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it went over a year. It almost reached 2 years, but we were very short of that. I remember this happened with Toonami Rewind as well. And not vehemently, but I never grew up with Toonami. I was never an anime kid. Like, I liked the toy-based ones, you know, your Pokemon, your Bakugan, your Beyblade, whatever. But I never got to experience Dragon Ball or Naruto. Like, I didn't watch Toonami growing up, and that's why I don't really share the same reverence for something like Toonami. But when Toonami Rewind was airing, I think it was like Friday day, like 5 p.m., I would tune in to watch it because I'm more inclined to watch those shows bunched together, an episode a week. That's how I prefer to watch things. Granted, I know they would never do this, but I kind of wish they would lean more into the historical accuracy of it all. Like, they were using late 90s, early 2000s Toonami iconography, but they were using modern day Funimation dubs. And I know that the other dubs are worse, but I kind of wish they would use the worst dubs just to like make it more immersive, because I never got to experience that. And I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just nostalgia. Maybe there's something more lax about being able to do stuff between commercials, but just like throwing it on the TV and having blocks, bumpers, and commercials between cartoons, randomly curated cartoons. And I fell out of watching Checker Pass, but then I got back into it when the voice actor for Space Goes Past, George Lowe, and then they were airing a bunch of Cartoon Planet episodes. Again, those are ones that I had never watched, and I'm sure they're like on digital somewhere, but they weren't on any streaming service, so I was excited to catch those, and there's only like so many episodes of that. And they have this library, and they don't even necessarily need to commission new bumpers. They could just reuse the same ones. But it seems like now that they permanently have the 5 p.m. slot, I think they said they're going to replace it with reruns of King of the Hill. And I don't know if they have any sort of syndication rights with the reboot. I can't imagine they do. But the idea with Adult Swim was always to lead in with something lighter. Because I started watching when Adult Swim would air at 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It would start at 10 p.m. And then I was there when they pushed back to 9 p.m. And when they pushed back to 9 p.m., they would do 2 hours of King of the Hill. Because while that is an adult animated show, it's
not like excessively vulgar.
You're right. It's not starting with Family Guy. Because when I was watching as a kid, it would go Family Guy, American Dad, Robot Chicken, Aqua Teen. And those are all very vulgar and offensive shows. And then when they got 8 p.m., they started rolling out Bob's Burgers reruns. And that one is very soft. And I love Bob's Burgers, but that's the least edgy of the Fox group.
You're unlocking memories for me right now.
Of watching Bob's Burgers at 8 p.m.
I didn't watch Bob's Burgers, but I remember like seeing my TV and it saying Bob's Burgers was coming up.
Yeah, I think I said this, that like I Pavloved myself to hate the X and Y anime of Pokemon, because I would leave my TV on Cartoon Network, I would fall asleep watching Adult Swim, and then my alarm would wake me up and get me ready for the high school, which I hated my alarm, I hated waking up, I hated high school, and I would wake up in a groggy state and look at my TV and Pokemon XYZ anime would be airing, and I would see Ash and Serena, and I'd be like, oh, I fucking hate this. Even though the show's probably fine, I conditioned myself to hate the sight of it, because whenever I see it, it makes me think about waking up for high school.
I remember when it was coming out, I heard a lot of people saying that it was better than the black and white anime, but I kind of stopped watching the anime like maybe like halfway, probably like around the time, probably like 2013.
I stopped watching during black and white.
I remember getting back into it around black and white, but I definitely like locked in when X and Y came on.
I've heard it's like really good.
I liked it. I remember liking it a lot, and like if not for nothing, it's like I hadn't touched anything Pokemon related for at least like 5 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it was like late middle school, early high school. I was like, damn, this shit good.
It's got hands.
What,
a lot of, yeah.
What am I doing?
I mean,
time?
There's too many things about the Pokemon anime that I think I find kind of annoying. I remember I tried to watch every single episode back in 6th grade, and I think I made it maybe like 250 episodes in, maybe 150.
That's
I kind of stopped halfway through Johto, because there was like one time I was trying to watch an episode, I just kept falling asleep.
You get 60 hours into the show, and you're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, right.
Dude,
I just kind of fell out of the habit.
In the era when like they were just posting anime in 3-part increments on YouTube, early days of YouTube, they didn't have Pokemon anime on YouTube, so I would watch the Kanto League. I watched the Advanced Saga on Google Video before Google bought YouTube, when it was just Google Video. I would go to Google Video because that's where they had Pokemon. They not had Pokemon episodes like how streaming services have Pokemon episodes. Like somebody posted them.
Uploads.
Yeah.
Dude, there were sometimes you can find a video that would get blocked on YouTube on Daily Motion, and that would come in so clutch.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna make my Daily Motion account now. But yeah, like the nostalgic vibe of it. I like the legally distinct N64. I mean, when they ended Toonami Rewind, I wasn't watching weekly anyway, but I was still kind of bummed that it didn't exist anymore. And now the same thing's happening with Checkered Past. And again, granted, I kind of stopped watching Checkered Past because I would end stream around the time and I had to get to work. But I think maybe like the next couple weekdays, I'll just put it on the background, because it is one of those situations that you're only upset when it's gone. And I am upset when it's gone. Yeah. But it's like, I streamed Multiverses a week or so back because they were shutting it down. And if they weren't shutting it down, I probably wouldn't have been streaming it, but still I'm upset that it was shutting down.
Yeah.
But I think this is not a pervasive problem, but that was like my stance, is that while Adult Swim is sort of the last bastion for experimental adult animation, or just animation in general, like letting creators make new shows. I mean, they announced recently there's going forward with like 2 Gendy projects, right? They have one called, what is it called? Something Safari. Let me look, but not on the screen. It is Heist Safari. They have High Safari, and then they're doing a third season of Primal, which I didn't even know.
Yeah.
If you had asked me prior to this, I just thought like, oh yeah, Primal ended. And I watched season 1 and 2. Like I thought it got an ending. But I guess we're just doing more Primal. And that's fine.
It did, but it it was open-ended enough where it was like it's like this isn't like a nice end. Like I'm all right with it ending here, but I really don't see it. There's no way they're leaving it, and
they really
like clockwork.
Love Gendy. This is like in the span of 5 years, like his third animated project with them, and that's not even accounting for Samurai Jack coming back. And he
is literally responsible for like I think the only original content coming out of that whole like between Cartoon Network, between I think like Warner Bros. Animation. I don't think they have anything original coming out.
Well, Adult Swim
other than Adult Swim.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is like that's so. Although it kind of took Cartoon Network dying for them to just level all of this stuff into one basket. But I'm pretty sure I don't know a whole lot about the behind the scenes going on. But I heard this recently because of the rumblings of the Megas XLR reboot. That apparently, if you don't know, and I might be paraphrasing, I could be off about this. Feel free to correct me. Megas XLR was written off as it was a tax write-off, which, if I understand correctly, you could just sort of not file for bankruptcy, but just chart a show or any property up to a loss and recoup the benefits that you would have gotten from it. But because of that, you're sort of put in like cartoon debt where you can't use the rights to that show or use it for anything until you pay back the amount. And it sounds like the co-creator of Megas XLR recently, in like a YouTube comment, so take this with a grain of salt, although it is from the horse's mouth, said that they made their money back in like restreaming or DVD sales or digital sales or whatever, and were in talks to bring back Megas XLR. But then it just, if you could believe it, it folded during the merger of Warner Bros. And Discovery, which seemed to be unmerging soon anyway, and they're also renaming Max back to HBO Max. So it seems like we learned nothing.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Deli, did you hear anything about this? I want to make sure I'm not getting anything like super wrong.
Yeah, I think the co-creators said that they were actually greenlit for a reboot. Not it like they got past development and they were given the go ahead, but the merger kind of put a stop to that.
Yeah. I made a video about this, that all the shows that were sort of affected by the merger, even something like OKKO that was probably going to be a streaming exclusive but then was kind of chopped up later. That entire era of cartoons, specifically for Cartoon Network. But what I heard, whether it be memes or jokes or whatever, was probably a DeMarco decision because he was in charge of the Adult Swim division at the time. I'm not sure. Do you know anything about this, Deli?
Adult Swim has generally been his wheelhouse, so.
Yeah. And he worked on early stages of Toonami and loved the action cartoons. So you can imagine he probably just had a soft spot for Megas XLR as well. But when the reshuffling happened and it was sort of out of his hands, like, you can imagine why... I don't want to say imagine why, like, yeah, I could understand why an executive would pass on this, because I don't agree with that at all. Even though I've never seen the show. I just rather more cartoons exist either way. But there was a lot of that. I still don't watch, like, modern Toonami, but it's sad to see something like Checkered Past and Toonami Rewind go. But it seems like a lot of what Cartoon Network exists as, although Adult Swim is gearing towards the future. Granted, I'm going to keep correcting myself, that I've been talking about the new season of Rick and Morty, but they also recently announced that they have greenlit even more seasons. So back after season 3, I think they commissioned like 90 more episodes, or maybe 70 more episodes.
I think
70, yeah. And that was like, after the middle of season 3 when people were really souring on the show, so people thought it was going to get seasonal fatigue. I think it sort of hit its second wind with the... It didn't get better because Justin Roiland got recast, because he was basically not involved anyway. But I think it got better like after that happened, because I did really like season 6 and I really love season 7. Season 8's give or take right now. But that show also got renewed through season 10 and season 11. And if you know anything about Adult Swim shows, the two, I wouldn't say longest running shows because that begets a time and date, but I'm talking about seasons. The only shows, I believe, to break double-digit seasons that were Adult Swim shows were Aqua Teen Hunger Force, or Aqua Teen subtitle, and Robot Chicken. Robot Chicken got 10 seasons and Aqua Teen got 11. Aqua Teen only recently got 11 because they had that weird 11th season in 2023 with like 6 episodes, and then they canceled it again. but it seems Rick and Morty is going to join that club of the big three. And you could argue that Venture Bros should be in there because that was another show that was constantly brought back. But when you think about Adult Swim, it makes sense to have the shows like Rick and Morty, Robot Chicken, and Aqua Teen, because those are the ones that sort of broke through a little bit and became mainstream popular. And I think that, I know they don't want to go for 10 seasons, but Smiling Friends is, in fact, another example of that. They've really struck gold again, and it took them a while to find it. They really did with Rick and Morty, and then it took them about another decade to find that next thing. Not from lack of trying, but
of
as
course.
Teenage Euthanasia, we found out it was canceled. Same goes for YOLO. We haven't heard anything about Royal Crackers. Deafening silence on Royal Crackers, so I'm holding my breath. But again, I have to stand by what I said, that I think 2 seasons to 3 seasons is okay. I mean, even Xavier, which is one of my favorite Adult Swim shows, got 2 seasons. Frisky Dingo got 2. More Laurel got 3. That I think it would be okay if it had 2 seasons and it had a decent ending. Like, honestly, if the season 2 finale is the last episode of Royal Crackers, I could still be happy because it's a really good finale. But, I like the show, and just from a selfish standpoint, I want to see more of the show. But they commissioned or announced a lot of new projects. Obviously, we don't know anything about Haha You Clowns yet. It hasn't released. There were other, I think the first, let me look into this actually, because I have them bookmarked. Let me scroll back unprofessionally.
I think women wearing shoulder pads is coming soon.
Do you know anything about that?
I saw it at a Comic-Con because they dropped the first 11 minutes as part of the Night of Swim. I'm not sure what they call it, but it was a really interesting pilot. Frankly, I'm a little surprised that they went for it because it seems like something that would remain as like an Adult Swim small and then just like never be heard of again.
Well, it's also,
but I'm very happy for it.
I'm showing my ignorance here. Do you know what language this is?
It's Spanish.
This is Spanish. Yes, and it's fully in Spanish. Like, they're just going to utilize subtitles.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because they've done a lot of, obvious. I was about to say Japanese anime, but that's sort of not an oxymoron, but kind of like, I don't need to say both terms. But when it comes to foreign cartoons, it seems like it is mostly just like anime. So I am more excited for something like this. One, because of the art style. I think it looks fantastic. But also just because it's a Spanish series. We haven't seen a lot of that. There's a lot of new ideas. I prefer this, right? I prefer them just having a lot of people that work at Adult Swim, and then they pitch a show and they go for about 2 or 3 seasons, and then they move on to the next thing. And when we hear about like, them wanting to end Smiling Friends or YOLO being canceled, I still believe that Michael's going to be around. Like, I think he's going to make something else. And I'd much rather them make other cartoons, because that's what it used to be like back in the day. I say back in the day for an era that I didn't even watch cartoons. But, you would have your creatives, your Craig McCracken, so on and so forth on, I don't want to say on payroll, but, you build up a decent rapport with the company, and then they pitch you a new idea. And I was talking about Kid Cosmic earlier in this podcast, but I really like that show, and it seems that Craig, who's working on another Powerpuff Girls reboot, I say another because there's multiple Powerpuff Girls reboots, not because he's worked on them. This is the first Powerpuff reboot he's working on. That somebody asked him why they're doing the Powerpuff Girls reboot, or if he wanted to do something else, and it sounds like he pitched a dozen of other original series to Netflix, to Warner, to Paramount, and they all sort of said no to them. So really the only market are cartoons that existed when people were kids. And that's where the rest of the announcements come in. Like, the track we've been following here is that Adult Swim is really leaning into their more popular shows or new ideas from these creators. Where on the Cartoon Network side, which isn't even really the Cartoon Network side, just Cartoon Network IP, because Cartoon Network as a channel exists, but they haven't created any original animated content that the quote Big Four, we knew about the Gumball reboot. I mean, we talked about that in the previous pod, or maybe the one before it. We knew from like years back that there's a ton of Adventure Time shows rolling out. Obviously more Fiona and Cake, I believe. There's that BMO preschool show. We heard about a movie, but I feel like I might be wrong in this. Have we not been hearing about an Adventure Time movie like since 2012?
Well, I think, okay, so there was the original attempt, right? In the mid 2010s.
Okay.
I feel like it was 2015-ish, but I'm not. But it was like, that was like the main attempt, and I think it was supposed to be theatrical, which is why it was such a big deal.
Right.
And that just kind of fizzled out. I think like right before the show ended. Again, I'm not super sure. I didn't recall hearing about like another movie if they're making it, I would imagine it's going to streaming.
Yeah,
I don't
think
even
it's just an
what
HBO Max
would be
movie.
going to theatrical at this rate that's animated other than maybe SpongeBob. Even that's like
That's why I
not
was
really.
so excited about Teen Titans Go to the Movies. I don't even like that show, but I remember
Talk
like
about
one, it was a 2D animated movie, which we don't get a lot of and didn't still.
Yeah.
That it was a 2D animated film, like fully 2D animated, and it was a Cartoon Network show. And the last time they did that, depending on what you count, was the Aqua Teen movie, and then that bombed, and then they literally and figuratively bombed. Sorry. And then they just never did that again. And
Yeah, I mean, most people, you know, the Powerpuff, like I think spiritually, at least, like the Powerpuff Girls one, it's like if that one succeeded, it definitely would have, because I think they were planning like something for Johnny Bravo too, or like something along those, you know, like they had plans, and I like that one in particular. Like if Aqua Teen succeeded, that would be an anomaly, but and it would be
that movie
earned.
was kind of purposefully bad.
Yeah,
there was also a Tim and Eric movie.
It was. But I mean, I still enjoy it more than Plantasm. I'm gonna be so real.
I do too. I'm glad you said that.
But like, you know, it's like Powerpuff was the one that they had everything riding on, and I wouldn't necessarily like. It's like Aqua Teen was the last one, but it's kind of like I'm not sure what it maybe more Venture Bros sooner. That would have been cool. I don't
like a theatrical film.
Maybe. Well,
that
maybe
at
least like a short. At least like a short. I think that's reasonable.
I think there should be more theatrical films for cartoons. I mean, why not? People are really going to the movies anyway.
I mean, that would be cool. It's like, I kind of joke, like, privately, like, sometimes, like, if Teacher's Pet didn't flop like a fish, we could have had 6 Phineas and Ferb movies. We could have had the theatrical hybrid shit. We could have had everything.
We could have been living beautifully.
We could have had a trilogy with hookers and blackjack. It could have been great. It would have been great.
Overarching story where they age between movies.
We could have had Phineas versus Ferb by now. You're not thinking of the bigger picture.
Pitting brother against brother. Yeah, but Adventure Time, because Adventure Time was the previous, like, oh my god, this is such a huge thing, like a huge cultural moment where a cartoon really grabbed people. And, you know, I just mentioned the term the Big Four. People talk about Regular Show and Gumball and Steven Universe, and those are all big. I'd argue Regular Show is probably more like nostalgia big compared to the other ones, although bigger and closer in scope to Adventure Time. Adventure Time is a whole different ball game. Like, that was basically like maybe this is exaggeration, the SpongeBob of its time. And
no,
you know,
it's not an exaggeration. That's on point.
SpongeBob got 3 seasons and then a movie, and then of course kept going. But that used to be the pipeline. Like, that's what you would expect. If your show gets popular enough, you get a theatrical film, and that would have been nice. I do, and I'll talk about this later in the year, but I really love Sponge Out of Water. I believe that's the second film. I just think it had really poor marketing that led people to believe it was some kind of CG superhero movie, when really that's only the last 10 minutes of the movie. It's mostly a 2D animated musical, but I digress. There are additional projects. There is a Steven Universe spin-off.
You like it? I was just going to ask, like, did you like it more than the third one?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
On occasion, like it more than the first one sometimes.
Okay, well,
that's not
SpongeBob is an ensemble cast, and the second movie utilizes that cast. What does the ensemble cast do in the first one? Sandy's got her 2 lines. That's pretty much it.
Put a second bucket over Sandy's head. I don't give a fuck.
Dude, what the hell?
Why not?
Why is Pearl not in the movie?
I feel like if you
Pearl's in probably like 2.
Dude, where's Larry? Where's Bubble Bass? Where's Flats? Where's the My Leg guy?
Put like 3 buckets over Sandy's head, and you automatically got something better than the sum of the Sandy movie.
Where's Bubble? Oh, I forgot they even did that. I guess there are more SpongeBob movies that I was aware of.
Yeah.
I like the Bob's Burgers movies too. I forgot about that.
I loved that movie.
I think it was a bad musical, but I think it was a good movie.
Nobody watches it for the.
I did. I heard it was a musical adventure, and guess what?
Well, they lied.
You know what I'm kind of a hater for, because I'm a grown man who has like opinions grown men should have.
Oh, I know where this is going.
I was so disappointed when I watched the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic movie.
Yeah,
I was so disappointed. Just like, ugh.
I know I ask this every time, but is that the one where they turn into teenage girls? Or is that the first one?
No, that's Equestria Girls.
Okay.
Equestria Girls, I mean, to be fair, I didn't have a lot of hope writing on it, because I was just like, okay, I gotta watch it before I watch season 8. Because I only recently watched, because I stopped watching the show during its original run in like season 6. Kind of fell out of it.
Yeah, it got bad.
Then I decided
seasonal rot.
Then I decided to get back into it and kind of start from the beginning. and I wanted to watch, the movie, because the movie actually, it's not like a lot of cartoon movies where it just doesn't have anything to do with the series and the story of the series. So I wanted to watch it, and I remember just thinking like, oh, they definitely were not expecting a lot of the people who watched the show. They were expecting a lot of people who had never seen the show to watch the movie, and that's why the characters are written that way. But I'm still mad about it because I'm a grown man who has opinions grown men should have.
Right. It should be a movie for the fans.
They should really
were you one of the guys that was like mad that it got snubbed at the Annies or like the Oscars?
No. I didn't hear about that.
Because I still hear about it sometimes. Like people still mauled over it. I don't know why.
I still think about I don't know if people bring it up as much, but I still think about the Vat of Acid episode beating The View from Halfway Down. And I say that as a fan of both of those, but I remember it. I mean, you could imagine how upset people were when it happened.
Yeah.
Because I do like both those episodes. Obviously, BoJack is leagues better, but I do still like both those episodes. I just think that episode could not have... It was vastly overshadowed by the fact that it beat... it beat out the most important BoJack episode. It's arguably the best BoJack episode. That even if the episode was really funny, it couldn't have possibly lived up to that hype or to that amount, because that's kind of just an unfair comparison. But it did not deserve to win that at all. But in comparison to the Big Four, I forgot about the Gumball movie is allegedly still happening. That was never planned for theaters, right? That was always just going to be some kind of streaming movie.
I think so. I want to say yes.
I think if any cartoon had a theatrical movie, it could be Gumball. I think they definitely could get away with that.
I think the rumor mill was just so big at the time that like people were like, it just kind of seemed like there were certain natural conclusions of that situation that people expected, but it kind of just spun out of control because like the Gumball truthers were like holding out. It's like, there's still time. Yeah. They're still going to do it. I have hope. And it seems like they formatted the show, the new seasons, in a way where it complements the movie. So I guess they're still making it. I don't know. I don't really care.
Me, the movie always seemed like less of, oh shit, this movie's in development. They're recording, they're scripting, they're doing all this. And more of Ben Bacchiolet being like, oh, I want to make a movie. Do you guys want to see a movie? Like, I don't know how much it got off the ground, but it sounded like he just wanted to make a movie. But it seems like it now might be happening. Maybe
Matt Pat's gonna love dissecting this movie
frame by frame.
Trailer, frame by frame.
Man, if we could live in the timeline they got the Pibby movie and Matt Pat's still doing film theory, oh my god!
I bet Cartoon Network's dying to have me make a movie for my show. I bet Cartoon Network's begging me outside of my door.
I know our buddy Kevin is punching the air right now because of the upcoming Steven series.
Many theories will be had that day.
Dude, I always try and be cool about it. I'm like, I'm chill, these are my peers, my buddies. But like my late teenagers, like I was on the Quentin train very early. I was watching him when I was in high school.
Watching his like nostalgia critic video.
I've been watching fucking Nintendo from like middle school, and I've been watching Crystal Clear since I was a kid. And I can like play it all cool, like, yeah, these guys are my buds. But like it is kind of weird. They're like, man, I watched these guys when I was like young. Now that I think about it. It was a very formative time for me. That and cartoon theory.
Yeah.
Is it too late for me to be a guest on a Frederator 107 Facts? Do they do those anymore? Is there still a chance? That's like the cartoon equivalent of being on Did You Know Gaming. Like, can I still do that?
Yeah, that is say.
I feel like every year I hear about them mentioned offhandedly. It's always talk about like who got fired, like which division got laid off next.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe we can manifest by the end of the year.
Hashtag
it's still possible.
Andrew on.
They still got an office in New York. I mean, we can storm the castle. Why not?
Yeah, the last video they'll ever post.
The last one.
We're gonna do I wanted to say Max Landis. That's not it. The Max Headroom. We put on. But when it comes to the Big Four, I'm gonna keep pushing this because I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because there are people online who kind of like play a victim when it comes to something they like everyone hates us for no reason. I do think a lot of the Steven Universe hate is kind of unwarranted, but at least from a popularity standpoint, I know that Steven, at least in my circle growing up and just around me culturally, is not nearly as popular as Adventure Time, Regular Show, or Gumball. So I'm constantly pushing for the Big Four idea now because it kind of justifies its existence a little bit. which I know I shouldn't be doing. But when it comes to like which streamers these ended up on, obviously I believe all the Adventure Time ones are going to be on Max because that's where all the Adventure Time stuff has been. We know that Gumball is going to be on Hulu, and now we know that Steven Universe Lars of the Stars is going to be on Amazon Prime. And that it may raise a few eyebrows about why it would be Amazon Prime until you remember that the other animated output on Amazon Prime, other than the likes of Invincible, are Has Been Hotel and Soon Hell of a Boss. And for better or for worse, that is a very circular Venn diagram.
Yeah.
When it comes to Steven Universe and those shows. But when it comes to the regular show, I guess new season reboot, I feel like we've been hearing about this for a while, like hearing through whispers. I still would have been content with more Close Enough, but this is fine. That it seems like Cartoon Network of Canada just randomly said like, oh yeah, new season of regular show coming out later this year. And we haven't even like got an announcement or heard anything else about that. I didn't even know that was happening until they just said that. They're like, oh yeah, it's coming out.
Well, CN Canada is the reason why we knew about Smiling Friends early.
Yeah. So I wonder what's going on over
the Rogue CN division.
Yeah, it's the Nintendo of Korea situation. But I heard that it's going to be on Grapevine, grain of truth, whatever we want to believe, that the regular show, the new seasons will be on Adult Swim and maybe be more adult oriented if that's the idea. Maybe they are scrambling to have something to lead into Adult Swim now. But do you know anything about this, about new regular show?
Weird idea. The idea of like, oh, we're bringing this kids show back, but like also we're gonna make it an adult, because they did that with iCarly. The characters are like having beers and like talking about sex and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean they did it with Samurai Jack. I like the idea of a show of enough time passing and then a show being brought back for adults. I didn't like it when they did it with Ren and Stimpy. But if you think about it, like, I mean, that's what a lot of early Adult Swim was. Is if you're a little bit older, let's say in your 30s, you would have grown up watching Hanna-Barbera cartoons like that of Space Ghost or Birdman or C-Lab, and seeing adult takes on those properties, even though they're entirely different, like it's not the same characters, is fun to have these shows grow up with you. And ultimately, my stance on these is I think they're going to be good. I'm excited for all of them. I like all these shows. I've emotionally imprinted on these. I'm happy there's more Gumball and more Adventure Time and more regular show and more Steven Universe and more Phineas and Ferb and more Futurama, maybe, and more South Park and more Family Guy and more Simpsons. But I'd also like to see some new stuff maybe sometimes. Potentially.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's kind of feels like the pipe dream, but yeah, I mean, original stuff. That's pretty epic. I would like some more of that, please.
Yeah, hopefully these shows will kind of just blossom into different things, and people who worked on them will prove their worth. I'm living in a fantasy world where like Warner's gonna see the error of their ways. He'd be like, you know what? Yeah, make your show. But there are other avenues. It seems like
David Zaslav is gonna like watch a video of yours and kind of like cry.
His heart will grow 3 sizes that day, and he'll change he'll peek his head out the window and say, "Good lad, what day is it today?" It's like June, I think, and then we'll get more cartoons. But there are other avenues. It seems like indie animation has gotten a lot more popular in the coming years. But I don't know if that's necessarily like the path to take. I'm optimistic. I'm constantly supporting these shows, although I'm not making like videos about all the new cartoons. I am watching them and talking about them on the feed the best I can. But I don't feel super excited, not because I'm not excited for these properties, but I think over the last years or so, I've seen so many like gimmick Twitter accounts that like document themselves as news post like, oh, this show is in development, and then nothing happens. I'm at the point now where if I don't see a trailer and a release date in front of my face, it's not happening. Like the Gumball season, we got a trailer for, and I don't know if there's ever been an instance where we got a trailer and it didn't come out. I'm sure that does exist somewhere, but until I see it in front of me, it is not real, and maybe that's why I'm not as excited, or at least tempering my expectations.
I agree with you. I mean, I definitely like don't. It's so hard to believe things nowadays, because you could have probably convinced me that the regular show reboot was announced in 2019, and I probably would have believed you. Well,
you said when we talked about the Gumball reboot that you didn't even know it ended.
I assumed that they just kept doing it straight up. Like I was like, oh, they probably just like kept doing it.
I mean, most shows just gotta keep going.
I'm fine with that because people were complaining about how they would like literally only play Gumball on Cartoon Network. So I assume that they were like trying to make new episodes.
It wasn't like as big of a phenomenon as Adventure Time or SpongeBob or even like parts of Smiling Friends, but it was definitely like up there. Like you see people posting TikTok clips all the time still. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like, I don't know, something about Gumball. It still feels like the show came out recently and it came out 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, it went through such different changes. I know it's sort of like there's a fringe community that prefers the designs of the early seasons, but I actually prefer the later seasons. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people do when it comes to writing, but like design-wise, I prefer the later seasons.
It's hard to come up with like, I think a balanced opinion on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because I was watching an episode a couple weeks ago, and it was a one that I watched as a kid. It's the one where Darwin thinks Gumball's a pretty girl because he put on a dress.
Oh, that was early, yeah.
Yeah, that was like a season 1 episode, and to be honest, like watching that as a kid, and then if I kind of decide to watch the whole show and I watch a bunch of stuff that I've never seen before, like I'll probably have an affinity for the stuff I watched as a kid, even if I don't want to.
Well, I've been saying this whole time the big four, but it's interesting you bring up shows like just kind of airing concurrently. If this is like the early 2010s, let's say like 2010 to 2013, maybe, right? Because then we stretch it to something like Gumball and Steven. You know, you have your Adventure Time that ended and then came back, your Gumball that ended and came back, regular show ended, came back, Steven Universe ended, came back. But you know what show came out around this time that is still airing to this day and has been greenlit for even more seasons?
Teen Titans Go.
That's right.
Yeah,
so I bring in my papers. This is what I'm presenting to the court here today, that we rename it the Big Five, because all 5 of them, if you were watching like new Thursday night block in 2012, other than Clarence and maybe like We Bare Bears, it's the same thing. It's like nothing ever changed.
Actually, we should keep the Big Four and kick out Steven Universe.
Yeah, let's get rid of the Big Four is Gumball, Adventure Time, Uncle Grandpa, and Teen Titans Go.
I think the reason people don't consider Teen Titans Go in the Big Four is people just don't respect it enough.
It's also like not a Cartoon Network Studios show, but granted, neither is Gumball technically.
You know what? International.
I think also it's based on a property that already existed too. It's not like new characters.
Dude, I worked at the theater in 2018. I remember going in to clean the theater after the movie, and they did the post-credit scene where they showed the original Teen Titans, and I was like, oh, they're gonna do another movie, and they did do another movie, but it's like straight to DVD quality.
Yeah, they were so fucked up for that, because everyone thought that meant like they're getting like an actual like spin-off from the 2003 show, and it's like, no, you don't know how any of this works. And so they didn't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
They were very extra.
But again, like I don't like the show, right? Not that I'm not saying like, oh, I want it to end. It's just like, you know, I wouldn't put it on. I don't think any show should end, even the ones I don't like. However, I do, like I said, the idea of these cartoon characters sort of existing forever. Yeah, they could have recast them because the characters are very different, but I kind of like that they kept the original 5 and they're just like constantly playing those characters, and even extended media. I think that's really fun that you have that adaptation of the character. And again, at some point, a voice actor will pass or retire, but I think it's sort of nice to have those legacy characters that you can then pass down to the next person. Like Eric Balza is doing a fantastic job with a lot of the like tertiary and just main Looney Tunes characters, and imagine if they just retired the characters after the passing of even like, I'm forgetting why am I blanking on the original name? Frank Welker's face is appearing in my head, but I know it's not him. You guys know what I'm talking about. Mel Blanc. It's Mel Blanc.
You said you were blanking on it. I was like, did he know what he? Does he
I
know
think
what
that's
he did?
what triggered it in my head. Is I did like an activation phrase. Like people get attached to. If anything is just ever slightly different, people aren't going to like it. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends on the circumstance. Well, I guess I'll ask, because now the half season is out. What do we think of new Ferb, who's not really new anymore?
I'm, again, watching it weekly. I'm only 2 episodes into it. And I liked episode 2 more because it was more of like, it's more of what traditional Phineas and Ferb is, whereas the first episode is really bringing us back. So, have you watched any of the new Phineas and Ferb?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm probably
going
to catch
perfect,
it.
Deli. We've cornered you. I want to hear what you have to say about it.
I wasn't even asking about like the show. I just like I was asking about like the new.
I didn't know they recast him.
Sounds like now. Yeah, the guy, because there's he got replaced like a decade ago. But, like we still call him New Ferb.
I see. It's like new SpongeBob. It started in 2005.
I mean, I guess. I mean, whoever replaces Tom Kenny is new SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Even if it's like 40 years in the future.
Yeah,
I don't know.
God, that's gonna be whenever that happens. It's gonna be a rough day, but I'm pulling for whoever replaces Tom
Yeah.
Kenny. I mean, ideally,
'Cause,
these
like-
characters would want to exist forever.
Yeah, because like Ferb is like very enigmatic, like kind of ethereal. But it was really just like a British kid talking in a booth, and now it's an American man talking in a booth, pretending to be British. So the vibe is different.
I could be misremembering, but was it like a pop star guy? Like, was it a Kingdom Hearts situation?
He was I mean, he was kind of like moderately well known because he was in Nanny McPhee. He was in Love Actually. There were like a couple other things here and there at the time, but like it wasn't like a Disney Channel situation where they cast like someone from the network.
Yeah.
They decided pretty late in the development they wanted him to be British. So, they just kind of grabbed the nearest child star and was like, okay,
Right.
we're gonna do this now.
Grab your local child. Did
Yeah.
they recast Jeremy, right?
Yeah.
It's no longer
For,
They
Mitchell
did. I thought
Musso.
they didn't. When did
Well,
they
they-
recast him?
Why did nobody
Just for
tell
this,
me?
because he appeared before. Like nobody saw this coming. Nobody
Right, he
said
was in the
anything either.
movies, right?
He was in the movies. Yeah.
Okay, well,
It-
so he was recast for season 5.
Yeah.
Okay, it makes more sense. Because no, literally, I was telling someone the other day that Mitchell Musso was fired from like Pair of Kings and his like in real life appearances or whatever.
Mhm.
But he kept voicing Jeremy.
Yeah, he
So
can
that's
get
why I
away
was
with
Yeah,
doing
really
that.
surprised
Nobody
that
knows
him-
it's
Yeah, that was the only thing he got to keep. So it's kind of
Yeah.
extra fucked up that they like got rid of him in current year when really it's like, it's like the dude's been struggling for a while. Like no one's gonna deny that. But it's like,
Yeah.
why are you making a big deal out of it? Like 12 years in the future. Are you that precious over this reboot of all things? Like you don't think it could survive like a little skit? Like, come on.
Well, do you think it was a
My
purposeful
parents would give
recast?
a
Like they didn't
shit
want to
if they
deal with him
kept-
anymore, or he just didn't want to do it?
I don't think it was a creative decision. I don't think the creators did that. I think that was an executive choice.
Interesting.
But we don't know for sure.
Right.
Maybe
Just the new
someone
Jeremy
got
voice
tired.
actor.
Until we
sound.
get his expose.
Yeah, I would love to see the expose early. I need an early draft.
They gotta recast him
This
as
actually
like the
reminds
blonde
me-
guy from Lemonade Mouth.
Oh, my
Oh, well, actually, it's funny you bring that up because one thing I had to do in my Lemonade Mouth review is I just did not want to bring that up. Like, I would just
Yeah.
feel so bad. Kind of like I don't know. I guess at that point in time, I was a little bit more cautious about the way I talk about people on my channel. I'd probably still bring it up, but in kind of in not a very serious way. Like, what's his name? Adam Hicks, like doing armed robbery and stuff, having such a bad drinking problem.
Yeah, God forbid someone do a little bit of armed robbery, you know?
But
A little
We've
bit.
all been in our 30s.
Officer
But yeah, I
only
know.
had one Glock on the scene. It wasn't a big deal.
It was like a
Mhm,
water
mhm.
gun, probably.
It
Maybe.
was probably a water gun.
Yeah, it probably wasn't. It was probably like a magic wand or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Mitchell Musso. You should come on our show and air your dirty laundry, and we'll start a harassment
I
campaign.
second that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last announcement this one I am excited for because, like I said, I want to. Well, I'll actually wait, Deli. I do want to get your opinion on new Phineas and Ferb, or at least the first batch of it so far. The resident Phineas and Ferb expert.
Switchy, were you gonna? Oh, or you said you didn't watch much of it
I
yet,
haven't seen
right?
it yet, but I'm probably gonna watch. Well, do you think I should watch like everything before it, or is it like not that important? Because I think
You mean,
I
like-
don't think I ever.
Like all the
I've only
Phineas?
watched like I can guarantee I've watched like the first 2 or 3 seasons of Phineas and Ferb. I don't think I ever saw the whole 4th season. Should I like watch that first, or should I just? Is it like not a big deal?
You know what? I can send you some recommendations for season 4, but I don't think you need to finish the whole season. It's not
Okay.
because the first original run of the show, that's like 60, 70 hours of stuff. So
Really?
you don't.
How
yeah.
long were the
Dude, it went
seasons?
longer than you think. Like I don't even
Is
think
it
I
like a-
watched
is it-
most of it.
Is this like a SpongeBob situation where they just have like 50 episode seasons or some shit like that go on?
No,
for, like,
no,
2
it
years?
literally was. So like, okay, so the breakdown was, it was season 1 had 51 episodes, and season 2 had 65, season 3 had like 62, I think, and then season 4 had like 51. But you have to consider that like there were 5-hour-long specials added on to season 4, so that Disney could like determine like if they wanted to give them more seasons. They did not until now, but I mean it ran for a ridiculous amount of time.
A little
And
hectic.
people still like wanted the characters to return, and they would
Which
they
season
begged.
was the Chronicles of Meat?
Season 2, But the follow up to it,
wow.
the follow up to it was season 3, which is really good, by the way. And they did a follow up in season 5, which obviously just came out.
Okay.
They did some movies in
I don't
between
think
there
they're
as
doing
well.
any more. Yeah.
If you really want to be up on the, I
I
mean, if you
watched
really want to
Candace
do everything,
versus
you got to
the
play the
Universe.
DS game as well. But
Well, you got to play
I
the good
actually
one,
did.
which
right,
is the
right.
movie.
Well, you got to play all the DS games if you really want to like be sure that you're up. You also got to watch the interview segments they did with like Jack Black and Lady Gaga, all that stuff.
Well, you got to watch those. You got to watch the international ones because there
Yeah.
were like 20 Disney.
Oh,
Channel
you should also
feeds
watch
and all.
Milo Murphy's Law because that'll tell you a lot about a lot of the Phineas characters.
You
and they
gotta
show up in there
watch
sometimes.
Hamster and Gretel. You gotta watch the ones with the Doofenshmirtz cameos, the
That's
Candace
true.
one, the
That's
Stacey
true.
one. Yeah, you gotta look out for those because it all takes
It's
place in
funny
the
that I'm
same
like-
like
it's fun-
county.
I mean, honestly, before you watch Phineas and Ferb, you should watch the episode that Jeff and Swampy, or Dan and Swampy, worked on at Family Guy. You gotta watch their Family Guy episodes.
well, you could. Well, Swampy didn't work on those. You could catch up on like the 2-3 British shows that Swampy worked on. You could watch all of Dan's episodes on Family Guy, SpongeBob, Cat Dog, Hey Arnold.
Yeah, if you're watching Family Guy
Rocco.
already, you should start with Johnny Bravo, just because that's where Seth got
Why not
his
do The
start.
Simpsons too? Because that's where they met technically.
Oh right, yeah, you gotta watch The Simpsons.
It's good material. You could watch Ninja Turtles too. Dan did. He had a part on that.
That's true, and Simpsons takes a lot of inspiration from like original animated sitcoms. So you want to get some Flintstones, some Jetsons in there. Fred and Barney Meet the Thing. The
Should squeeze in some
Honeymooners.
Tex
I guess if
Avery.
you're already watching the Flintstones, you should watch the Honeymooners as well, just to like get
I mean,
some
if we're
context.
being real, Phineas and Ferb exists because of Tex Avery, right? So
Right.
really, we should be talking about the wacky world of Tex Avery in
True.
addition to all of his shorts.
It's what he
before
would have
that
wanted.
point. That's what he would have wanted.
Yeah.
He would have loved Phineas and Ferb. I'm kidding. I mean,
What do you?
maybe before.
It is infinitely funny to me that the term Cal Arts art style still comes from, what was it? It was John Kay complaining about the Iron Giant.
Yeah, more or less, because it was it also applied to like Disney too. I think it was kind of like his way of like being, this is over animated, this is too like Disney, like it's it's freakish. Where's those Hanna-Barbera fucking constructions that I like?
That UPN, yeah,
know?
those thick or thin. But those are all when it comes to Cartoon Network announcements, which is mostly just their IP. Because are any of the shows they announced going to air on Cartoon Network, or is Gumball just like a Hulu thing? Obviously, regular show is going to be Adult Swim. Did they air Fiona and Cake on Adult Swim? I think they did.
I don't remember that.
Maybe not.
But I think like I wouldn't be surprised if later down the line they didn't. I think that was like the plan, right? Because I think for all the new stuff they announced internationally, they said that they were going to Cartoon Network, and then in the States they were going to prioritize streaming. And that has mostly been the case for a while, because they did Elliot from Earth, the Fungies, Tig and Seek. They all got like regular rollouts internationally on Cartoon Network. It's just
even
over
like
here.
Total Drama
got fucked
Island
over.
season 2 just recently started airing on Cartoon Network.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think eventually they'll make it, but it definitely is not like a high priority for them to make it to the linear channel.
Well, Cartoon Network is just reruns. I think it was either when I was at VidCon or maybe when we were at MomoCon Switchy that we just like put on, because like the best time to watch cable television is when you're just at like a hotel. At least for me, because I don't have cable. Just like, let's catch what's going on right now. There was Tiny Toons, and then also like I think it was airing the new Total Drama, or the first Total Drama reboot season while I was at VidCon. I'm like, oh man, I watched this like last year already.
Right.
But the first season did pretty well. And then the Jellystone also eventually aired on Cartoon Network. I agree with what you said when it comes to the streaming bubble, or maybe people becoming disenfranchised for streaming. And that's why at the end of this pod, I pitch. I think I got a business opportunity. With the recent influx of not owning your show when it comes to streaming, they could go away forever, and video games getting more and more expensive, I think now is the perfect time for the three of us to open up a rental store where you can rent movies and video games and TV shows. I think we're going to get on the ground floor of this idea. I just need a little bit of a bit for investment, and then I think we can turn our profit tenfold.
It's funny. I remember when I was like 10, I went to Blockbuster. Just kind of, just for the thrill of it, I guess.
Just to feel something.
And rented like a DVD of SpongeBob. But here's the thing: there was only like 2 episodes on it, and we had to bring it back the next day. And I'm like, that's not worth it.
To rent it?
Yeah, we had to like bring it back in a day or some shit like that. It's like, what? You have to like drive back to Blockbuster.
Why'd you have to bring it back in a day?
Yeah, I was like, it's like apparently I was the period or something.
That's so strange. I've never heard
Maybe
of
my
that
mom
before.
was just cheap and she just wanted put it for a day because she didn't want to spend extra
I
money.
was very young when we went to Blockbuster a lot, so I don't remember a whole lot of it. I do remember renting Elmo Palooza and then just keeping it because I would watch it so often. And one of the crowning achievements of my N64 collection is the Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut, which was a Blockbuster exclusive. So you could only rent it, like you couldn't buy it anywhere. And it still has all the Blockbuster stickers all over it. But I think it's worth looking into. I think we can really do fabulous business together if we just create this new rental store. Also, there's a new Adult Swim series called The Elephant, which features 3 animation teams animating an act, each a 1-hour special by Pendleton Ward, Rebecca Sugar, with Ian Jones-Quartey, and Patrick McHale. And if you think about it, that's kind of what happened to Adventure Time, where there were 3 different creators that made different seasons and didn't know what the other person was making. Does anyone have any closing remarks when it comes to the future of adult or kid animation? Kid animation. Any animation. Oh, sorry, real quick. This is very important. Bob's Burgers and Cleveland Brown and Hank Hill. I called them Bob's Burgers. They're coming up. They're in Fortnite. Burgers. I just think it's important that everyone knows this. They are in Fortnite.
I'm excited about it.
Continue. We'll do our closing remarks now.
Animation's cool.
Oh, wait. Oh, I forgot what. Okay, last thing. This will be the last thing we do. Deli. We ask all of our guests this. We've only had about 4 so far. I know we're mainly here to talk about cartoons. However, this is the Switch to Ultra podcast. And I have to ask everyone to sponsor a character to eventually be added. We talk a lot about Super Smash Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with the series or if you've played a Super Smash Brothers game. But they have a lot of video game characters within them. So let me ask you, Dele. If you could sponsor and back and pick one video game character to be in the next Super Smash Brothers game, what would it be? What can I put you down for?
You're really putting me on the spot here.
I didn't give you a lot of time to prepare.
The whole world is watching right now.
And it will be immortalized on this chart with the others. Dan picked Shovel Knight, Gnarly picked Rhythm Heaven Girl, Salty picked Shadow, Wyatt picked Ravenbeak. So you get some stiff competition. Video game or video games.
I don't have one.
Interesting.
I'm very boring in that regard. I was more of a gamer like when I was younger, if I'm being honest.
What was your favorite game as a kid?
I don't think I had one. I've like always like skirted around like various interests and everything. I think. Are you familiar with Captain N the Game Master?
I am familiar with Captain N the Game Master.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't think you'd be my first choice.
Wait, just Captain N himself?
Yeah.
I don't know if that counts.
I mean, why not?
Because he's not a video game character.
It's 2025, you know, we got Bob.
Let him in there. Put him in. I mean, we have Simon, we have Kid Icarus, we have Mega Man. I'm trying to find like a Captain N character that isn't currently represented in Smash. The Samus, man, this is a tough one. I'm seeing like punished fan art of him. You know what? Fuck it. I'll allow it. I'm looking at Smash renders right now. In any other scenario, not allow it, but I did put you on the spot here. So I'm putting Captain N on this chart.
Yeah.
And if he is added, then you will be the first to know that you got it right.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the odds are very low, but they're not impossible. If it is Captain N, I think I'll be a little upset, but I'll also I'll be happy for you above all else. And that's where we end off.
I'll be happy for me too.
Yeah, man. And the people will celebrate in the street with the updated chart of Deli's sponsor, Captain N.
Yes.
That is all we have today for the Switch to Ultra podcast. Do you have any closing remarks or anything to plug? Any videos you're currently working on?
Phineas and Ferb videos all summer. I probably will not.
That's
really
right. Once a day, twice a day, even 3 videos a day.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying a 4-hour schedule now, so hopefully the Europeans can get behind this more. But I'm more of those unrelated retrospective. Maybe by the end of the month, something like that. I think that's it for now.
Nice. Switcher, do you have any updates on your current project?
No, not really.
Well, it's trucking along, and mine, I think I'll announce mine probably at the end of the month. But I'm excited to see it without giving too much away. I feel like I often either talk about I think I'm too much getting into too much nostalgia, right? Or just talk about my childhood specifically. So the only hint I could say is it's either way in the past or more in the future. That's all I'll say. But regardless, this has been Switch to Ultra, the 12th installment. I've been your co-parent BH Ultra.
And I have been your co-parent Switchy.
And we were joined by our fabulous guest here today.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
me.
Yeah. We covered everything I wanted to, but thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to hang up now in a dramatic fashion and play the outro. But thank you so much for joining us.
Hell yeah, this has been fun.
We could do this again more often. I'll try and not put you on the spot as much next time. We'll try and get like more things at a time.
Come prepared.
Oh,
now I know what to expect.
Yeah, at any point, actually, wait, bring this setup back over here. If at any point in the coming weeks you want to change your Smash character, just let me know. We'll have a regular segment.
Not be,
we'll have the.
Oh,
okay. So you're staunch in that. You're locking that in.
I'm standing 2 toes down. This is my final pick.
2 toes down. I will
die on this hill if I have to.
And this has been Switch to Ultra. Guys, I want to shower so bad. I haven't today. I just woke up. Whatever. Don't worry about it.